Basically now I think we can see 87 participants have joined. So probably more will join soon. So we can kickstart from here. So Hare Krishna, and we welcome you all for a very special seminar on art of parenting, raising Krishna conscious children in a very special environment on the basis of Srimad Bhagavatam. So I, with a great pleasure and a wonderful gratitude, I would like to welcome Her Grace Aruddha Mataji from United States of America. She is completely a different time zone. It's like 6 hours apart from us. It's 1 o'clock here, it's 7 o'clock over there in her place. But she's so enthusiastic, so inspiring, and so wonderful and charming that she's spreading that love and joy of Krishna consciousness throughout the world. I just wanted to briefly introduce so that Mataji's contribution actually. Obviously, Mataji and her husband, Anantarupa Prabhu, they started a temple in USA in 1986 as a small weekly program in their home. And now 30 years, I mean, plus 30 plus years, from that time, it has become, a beautiful Vedic temple for Sri Radha Banki Bihari. So this is, it's giving me like, goosebumps that, how wonderfully they have, made the whole thing. And obviously, because Mataji is going to talk about the raising Krishna conscious children. So we can see that, charity begins from home, and what she has done home also is something great, because her two sons, Gopal and Ravi Gupta, using the curriculum based on Srimad Bhagavatam, translated by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, she has actually homeschooled both of them. And now the glorious thing is that they have actually done PhD from Oxford University. I mean, at the age of 21, they finished the PhD in Oxford University. So this is something very wonderful and to really get inspiration from, because Mataji has done it from the early age and, raised it in the same environment. And obviously, as you might have seen the book also, the homeschooling, Krishna conscious children, that book has been written by Mataji. So Mataji is the author of that book. I have read that book actually. I felt very inspired. I really got so many wonderful ideas how we can raise children in a Krishna conscious environment. So we are very, very fortunate again. And not only that, now Mataji has been doing something amazing project actually. And I'm very happy to share that she is writing a guidebook, the Srimad Bhagavatam guidebook for children. And, she is doing chapter by chapter. So she has finished Canto 1, 2, and 3 already, which is available on Amazon. So if any one of you would like to, search and, go for it, please do so. The Canto 4 will be available in 2 weeks, and the Canto 5 is basically in work in progress. So something great throughout the whole world, because, this is a revolution, that all our upcoming generation are going to get a lot of advantage by it. And Mataji goes all over the world to teach the aspect of parenting and, inspire all the parents to take up Krishna conscious nicely and give the children in the same way and build that environment on the basis of Srimad Bhagavatam. So please, we can say a 3 big times Hari Bol to welcome Mataji in the association of East London devotees here. We are very, very fortunate to have Mataji. So can we say 3 times Hari Bol to welcome Mataji?
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Aruddha Mataji ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you so much, Mataji. So Mataji is going to share a PowerPoint presentation with all of us. So please take your notepad, your pen ready. And if you have any question, then there will be a question answer round as well in the end. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Yogeshwar Prabhu, thank you. Such a generous introduction. I really actually not deserving of all that. But one thing I do want to correct on the onset is that I actually the Srimad Bhagavatam guidebooks, they are not my creation. This is a teamwork of many parents around the world who are working very hard to put this together. So more about this later, but I just wanted to correct that because definitely it's a collective work. For many, many years, we've been doing this of very qualified parents throughout the world. And they create resources and inspire children and they work together. So thank you, Prabhu. And so I'm really happy to be here with all of you London devotees. It's always a pleasure to be, to talk to you. I have not pro- I have not done a seminar for London devotees since many, many years, and it was my great desire to actually go there and very soon in the near future. And then the pandemic hit, so this is a nice way to reach out to you all. Uh, and so today, what I'm going to do is a seminar on the art of Krishna conscious parenting. And this seminar will be divided into 3 sections. And that the first one is based on the ISKCON's motto, which is purity is the force. Which in this part, I will cover the home environment. In other words, what we should do to make a home conducive to the Krishna consciousness. And like Prabhu said, charity begins at home. So in other words, we have to, Prabhu, maybe you can mute everyone. Prabhu, can you mute people so that there's no noise? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mataji, I'm going to mute all, so you probably need to unmute yourself. Huh?
Okay.
I'm going to mute all over.
Okay. Okay, Prabhu, thank you.
Thank you.
That will help, yeah. So the first part, like I said, is based on the motto, purity is the force, and in which I'll cover how to make a home conducive to the spiritual welfare of our children. The second part will be based on the motto, books are the basis, which will cover the academic curriculum for our children, the teaching, especially the study of Srimad Bhagavatam for our children, and the benefits and the result of that. And then the third part will be the extracurricular activities. Preaching is the essence, where children can be trained to reach out to others. And this way, their own identity as devotee increases tremendously. After that, after each section, I can open it for questions from all of you. And go, and towards the end we can open it for more questions. So I could see in the chat box many of you already have a lot of questions, so I'm really looking forward to that part of answering your questions, because that is where the heart is. So let me begin with the first part, and I will do screen sharing here. Now I do want to specify that that this, even though I homeschool my children, and this whole seminar is really for everyone, whether you're homeschooling or not homeschooling, because the basic principles remain the same. Okay. Okay. So this is a beautiful quote by Srila Prabhupada. So I'm going to read this out to you, and it kind of sets the tone for raising children in a Krishna conscious environment. So Prabhupada writes, if we train children by developing and encouraging their propensity to love Krishna, then we shall be successful in educating them to the topmost standard. Then they shall happily agree to do whatever you ask them. So this is very nice. When I read this quote, when I was starting to homeschool my children, I was thinking that Prabhupada means that it's really saying that we should make our children into nice devotees. And that is very important. But then for our academics, for the academic training, I should, give them good foundation for all the subjects, and teach them well. But actually what Prabhupada was saying is that raising our children as devotees means good education. So in other words, when we raise our children as good devotees, everything else will follow. As we know, material comes from the spiritual, not the other way around. When we understand the source of everything, the source of all knowledge, that is Krishna, then naturally everything else will become available to us. Material qualities, that all the demigod qualities, they are waiting at the door of the devotee to accept, waiting for him to accept it, right, or her to accept it. Qualities such as great opulence or wealth or learning, all these qualities, they naturally follow once somebody becomes a devotee, a pure devotee of the Lord. And only with time did I understand what Prabhupada said, that actually Prabhupada, he built a house in which everyone could live. And he gave us a process, a Krishna conscious process, in which pretty much includes everything. So we see that how when we raise our children in a Krishna conscious way, then we will be educating them in every way. So in order to understand how we can raise our children in a Krishna conscious way, the way Prabhupada wanted us to raise them, is first to understand what was really Prabhupada's desire for our children. Now, there were three things that Prabhupada really stressed. And I'm sure all of you can guess one of the three at least. And that's one was book distribution. And the second was deity worship. And third was Gurukulas. Now, why was establishing a Gurukula so dear to Prabhupada's heart? Is because he really wanted our children to develop good character. Prabhupada was not impressed with scholars who had no character. He said it's like decorations on a dead body. So he wanted our children to develop qualities, Vedic qualities such as self-control, humility, tolerance, mercy. And he would say then that would make them gentlemen. So, and we know that, and Prabhupada would oftentimes say that how in this world there are so many, rogues and thieves today. We can see that, but they are coming from some of them are coming from very good families, very rich families, and educated families. So, in other words, education or wealth is not a criteria for good character. But Vedic education is different because it focuses on development of good character. Now, even 50 years ago, Prabhupada said, people in India from very influential families would send their children to Gurukula just for this purpose of training them to develop good qualities. And Srimad Bhagavatam is full of personalities like that, who went to Gurukula to be trained. All the great kings, such as Yudhishthir Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj, they were called Raj Rishis, which means saintly kings. In today's world, we can't even imagine a leader being saintly. Leader would mean that, he's political, he's self-serving, these types of qualities we give to him, right? But in Vedic times, a Kshatriya king was also a godly king, right? Because it was expected that he knew the Shastra, that he knew Krishna, and that's what gave them naturally all the good qualities. Because Krishna, he possesses all these things. All these qualities are coming from him. So when we learn about Krishna, we naturally develop these qualities. So my journey briefly is that, I moved to a place called Boise in America. And when I went there, when we went there as a family, my husband and I, then there were actually no temples there. So we started our own temple. And when my children became of school age, I started thinking about their academics, which school they're going to go. And I put them in a private school, worried that public schools may not be very good. And they went to a private school for about 2 years. And I would go and volunteer time over there. And very soon I was quite disappointed when I saw many things that I was not satisfied with. And briefly, it was more about the values, like all of you. I'm sure all of you have great ambitions to give an all-round training to your children, and that they also take the values that you've developed as a devotee. Every parent has a desire to do that. And similarly, even I had the desire. So when I saw these things, how the lack of values in that school, I was disappointed. And many of them were, not just on the level of poor character, poor training, but also on academic level. I noticed how they were not challenged enough. How schools are made for the average. If you're below average, then you're left behind, basically. And if you're above average, you're pretty much bored. And I saw that personally in my older son's class. It was a math class, and he finished his work about 20 minutes early, and he had nothing to do. Because a teacher, she cannot be expected to give everybody equal time. She has to go on the average output. So in this way, I was sadly disappointed. And then, of course, on the level of values, one time for my younger son, he told me when he came home that how he in his class, the teacher had a boyfriend, and they were, kind of kissing in front of the entire class, So, things like that. And of course, there were other things that happened. And so I became a little dissatisfied, even though it was a fairly good school. It wasn't all bad. But I thought, I was thinking, well, let me see if there are any options, And then I happened to come across the concept of homeschooling, which was getting quite popular in America, but not among devotees so much. And so I took that plunge. It was a very scary plunge. I was actually very unsure of myself. So I thought the best way to do this is to buy a curriculum. And I did. In America, you can buy a whole year's curriculum, which I did. And I thought, well, I'll try it in the summer. And if it doesn't work, then I will go put them back in school, and just keep an eye over them. And to my surprise, in about 3 months, they had finished the entire year's curriculum. And that too, they were studying like 2 hours a day, pretty much. So I was thinking, well, this is not so bad. And so I did that. I decided to homeschool them. But then, after a year, I was actually quite dissatisfied with the paid curriculum that I bought. And I wanted to make my own curriculum. And that's when I started the idea of teaching them through Prabhupada's books. So more about that later. But this is my journey of how I homeschool my children. But like I said earlier, a lot of you, I'm sure, are not homeschooling. In fact, most of you are probably not homeschooling. You may be even actually sending them to a wonderful Krishna conscious school. In London. I know there is a few there. So, so this seminar is actually talks more about basic principles of Krishna conscious parenting. So the first part of the seminar is based on this motto: purity is a force. And let's talk about the do's and the don'ts. What we should do in the home front, and what we shouldn't do in the home front. So let's talk about what we shouldn't do first, and get that done before we do the do's. So the first one is avoiding television and limiting internet. So why is this a problem? I'm sure all of you have read or know enough to understand why it's a problem. So there's two problems. One problem is the content. As you know, television breaks all the 4 regulative principles. For the very regulative principles we as devotees are trying to follow, those are the very ones it breaks. And which is intoxication. As you know, most of the shows are full with ads about alcohol or drinking and things like that. It's quite commonplace. And then, of course, intoxication, gambling, and illicit sex. Plenty of scenes where they are the personality, the people in the show are put in compromising situations. Then, of course, the gambling, right? Intoxicating and meat eating. And we know how that, is shown and encouraged on television. So it breaks all these principles. So the more we watch, the more we um, get away from these, principles. Now it's kind of very quite amazing why we would try to become devotees on one end and then at the same time try to watch something that breaks these very principles that we're trying to follow. It's like lighting a fire and pouring water on it at the same time. Okay, so so that's the content. So the content is a problem, and when I talk about internet, I will explain more why it's such a problem. And then, of course, the next problem is the medium. So the way the material is presented to us is very, very addictive. Right? It's the screen. The screen is very addictive. Why? Because when children watch television, it's a one-way download from the tube to the brain of the child. It's not an interactive session. So what happens is they've done research that the mind becomes mentally lazy because it doesn't get a chance to exercise. And that's why we see that they've done statistically it's proven that children who watch a lot of television, they end up being very poor in math and in reading because the mind becomes lazy and is not able to, doesn't want to think very hard. So the scores on reading and math start falling due to in America the average time people watch television is at least 4 hours, sometimes 6 hours. So you can imagine if a child goes through watching 4 to 6 hours of television every day and goes to school for 8 hours and goes to sleep for 8 hours, hardly any time is left. And that is mostly spent in taking care of your body. Right? And it's also said here, they've done research that in a contrast, parents spend about 4 minutes of quality time per week with their children. So pretty much television becomes the instructor. Television and internet becomes the instructor. So that's the content, the medium, the medium. So, and this is proven by the fact that when we read a book, then one has to decode the words and visualize the image in our minds, right? So the mind has to think and be creative. But and even when we hear something, maybe on a radio or at least we still have to make a picture, a mental picture of what we are hearing, when we hear. But when a child watches television, everything is given to him on a platter. So it's said that how the brain becomes all mush. They've done statistics proves that actually there's no brain activity during the time a child watches is on the screen. So, so the medium is very, very addictive. Of course, people say that why not good shows like the Discovery Channel shows in America? Well, the problem with good shows is that it also has a lot of commercials, right? And so that becomes contaminating, and also it's addictive because no child will stop at one show, and then that will lead to more and more viewing of TV. Now, there's other questions that's being raised. When I talk to parents, they say that, well, is it practical? In other words, won't children feel out of place? Won't they feel like social misfits without television? Well, I have had no such experience with my children, and I know that it doesn't take too much actually to become informed as to what's going on in the world. You just have to know, maybe you can read the headlines of the newspaper and on the front page, and you pretty much get an idea of what's going in the world. And because devotees and children are, they have knowledge about, about the Shastra, about, the philosophy. They know the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. They can put a Krishna conscious perspective on anything they hear. And they sound actually very intelligent. When you talk to somebody and you talk a little bit about your philosophy, they're very impressed, right? Things that we take for granted is actually totally unknown to the people there. So one can always give a very Krishna conscious perspective on anything, even if one doesn't know ahead of time what's going on. Right? And besides, in school, no child fits with every group. Every child has her own special favorite group, and is not expected that he or she is going to fit into every group. So that point is not very valid either, because in fact, children who grow raised in a lot of screen time, they actually become social misfits. It's the other way around. They actually become incapable of carrying on good conversations with people, because they live in this world of screen, and for them that is reality. So it's said that they develop very poor social skills, actually. I don't know if you've noticed, but at least in my life, I've noticed how when I'm talking to somebody, uh, and there's a lull in the conversation, then one doesn't know how to fill in that gap, and they quickly take out their phones and start punching buttons. Why? Because they haven't learned the art of social communication. So all these things are very, very detrimental to our life, to the children's upbringing. And so I would encourage you to avoid television. In fact, in my own life, we had a television set, but that there was no signal. And so we used it as a VHS player during that time. So, and I didn't find anything lacking as they were growing up. In fact, they and neither did they go through feeling lacking. And I've talked to so many parents who are also not doing, exposing their children to these things, and they feel very satisfied in what they're doing. And of course, the internet also, it can actually be even more addictive than television. And we all know about something called internet addiction. It's a serious problem in today's world, and young children especially are succumb to that, because in America, all the children, 99% of the children over 12, they go online in social media every day. And this problems arising from those addiction is immense in America. In Utah alone, there was a rise of suicides among students by 141% in 1 year. And of course, we can talk endlessly about the negative effects of internet addiction. Besides depression and finding artificial, making relationships which are completely not real, and can lead to depression, because young people's world becomes this world of Facebook and other social media, and they live in this world, whereas not being able to communicate face to face with people with actual relationships. So what should we do about this? Should we not have internet? Did internet seem such an integral part of our life? Now, we can, even in schools, they expect children to go on the internet to do their homework. So the way we deal with this is that we use it as a tool, just like we'd use a tool, just like a hammer. We use it when we need it and we keep it away. It's not like we take a hammer around, put it in our pocket and have a relationship with that, right? So in other words, we use the internet when we need to, and then we log off. We should never keep it on always mode, on mode. Right? We should use it as a substitute for the post office, to do our emails, maybe to look up some statistics. But in terms of our studies, children's studies and their research, definitely it should be done out of books. And we see how this principle of going to the library and looking at books is fast disappearing. It's an information age now, And what is more important is not so much the information, but actually the source of the information. Where is this coming from? And as devotees, we are very particular about that, right? The first thing we ask for is the source. Where is this information coming from, right? And then we fold our hands and respectfully ask for the content. But the way internet works is just the opposite. There is no authorized source. Everything within the internet is fluctuating, right? It's like Maya in its best form. Things are changing. Everything's ephemeral. It's here today, but it's not there. The one website may be here today, and then tomorrow the website has disappeared. So it's very, very, it's so we should be very careful. We should be very careful of this overuse of internet among children. And they've done research where young people, they actually are regretting that they were given smartphones by their parents early in their life. In fact, I'll read you one statement from one of these TED shows that I heard one time. TED Talk shows. This was a girl, a teenage girl, and she was 11. And what she wrote is, everything evil is at my doorstep. Pornography and anorexia. I wish my parents had saved me from this madness. I dealt with suicide attempts, anxiety, all due to social media. Took my innocence, my childhood. It is stealing the joy. He said, they're being robbed of the childhood. They're dealing with depression, social media, such as Instagram, is putting pressure on our teenagers. It's opened up to cyberbullying to the extent that we've never experienced before. Okay, so there's a lot of problems. You can look up and see the statistics that this unlimited use of internet, and it begins at home, right? We first have to limit our own use. How we see parents, they're just so addicted themselves to phones, to smartphones. They're always on that. They're always checking their contacts on WhatsApp and this and that. So we should have particular times when we look at it and when we don't, and then we keep it away. Don't keep it on the dinner table. Don't keep it during your time with your children. So all these things are very important and will help in their Krishna conscious. So now the nice positive things is what we should do in order to keep the Krishna consciousness of our children. And that's one of them is the morning program. Prabhupada wanted our children to be allowed to run and play and to eat as much prasadam as they liked. But the one thing that he always was very particular about in the Gurukulas is the morning program. He wanted all children. This is the only austerity he asked from our children, is to, when they woke up in the morning and cleaned themselves, then to participate in a morning program, which we know what it is, right? Our prayers to our spiritual master, Nishinga prayers, Tulsi Puja, and Guru Puja. All of these, very important. Why? Because it sets the day very nicely. It's a very good discipline. It makes them peaceful. It actually curbs misbehavior. Many people ask me about misbehavior among children, how to take care of that. And a very good way is to start the day with a nice program, a morning program, because that really makes the mind peaceful and intelligent. Of course, we can be very practical about it. We can make it flexible. For very small children, it's hard for them to stay too long, so we can make it shorter. But one thing is very important, that we make it very enjoyable and positive. And you'll see the difference. Children who grow up with this discipline, no matter where they go, they just it becomes so much a part of their life that no matter where they go in life, they continue to do that. The next, japa. Japa, very important. I get so many questions on japa because children, it's a very challenging thing to introduce children to japa. So we can do that depending on the child's, inclination. We should not force them, but we should actually encourage them by setting a good example. Okay, Prabhupada was against making japa a form of punishment. Stop it! And also, he was against having japa, having a reward system set up for Japa. In other words, we shouldn't say to the child that if you chant 2 rounds, I'll give you an ice cream. Or if you don't chant, I'm going to punish you. You'll have to sit in your room for 1 hour. So all this gives a very negative connotation for japa. So japa should be very pleasant. It should be something that we should encourage our children by doing it with them. That is the best way, is actually to chant with them. Those many rounds that they are chanting. And another good way to introduce them to japa is, having collective japa with other children. Maybe on Ekadashis, every Ekadashi we chant japa together with other devotees in the community. This way the children get attracted. Oh, this is a very fun thing. I should do that. So I already did that. One time Prabhupada was actually very upset with the school authorities because small children were not given beads. And the reason why is because they were throwing them on the floor or putting them on the floor. And Prabhupada said, no. You train them not to do that, but not that you take the japa beads from them, So he was very not happy with that. With me, we would chant together. I would tell my children that, you should chant, because when you chant, you can imagine Krishna dancing on your tongue. And that's Prabhupada said that once. So it's a nice, so we can think of ways to encourage them, And another good trick is to have them increase a round on each birthday. So prasadam, one cannot talk enough about the importance of eating prasadam, right? Very, very important. Just like, and this was basically Lord Chaitanya's mood, is to, he did not come here to annihilate demons, just like Krishna came, but he came to destroy the demoniac mentality through the process of chanting and prasadam. Just like we can tame an animal, a tiger, by food, same thing we can train our minds, and curb all these unwanted desires by prasadam. As we know, prasadam is so powerful that, if you're preaching to a non-devotee and you keep talking to him and it doesn't do much, but you give him a plate of prasadam and immediately his heart changes, right? So, eating is a very important activity, especially for children, and they love to eat. This is how they experience life, especially little children. And for them, naturally, we will have to give them more variety, right? And it's a lot of work, but this is a very, very good, powerful way to, substitute their desire for other foods. When we give all types of foods, wonderful prasadam to them. So in the early years, variety keeps them satisfied, but later on, other interests take over, and we don't have to, give them so much variety. There's many other challenges that people face in this, and I'm sure all of you have it, and I had them as well, in terms of how to deal with, non-prasadam food at parties that one has to go to, at work when fathers have to go to, how to deal with those things is challenging, I'm sure. But however, being very consistent in our behavior all the time, each time, actually people respect for what you stand for, or for who you are, rather than making fun of you. In fact, if we show ourselves as not sure of what we believe in, and unsure, and also flickering in our vows, then people really actually laugh at us, right? So one good trick is to be consistent, to let people know that these are your beliefs, this is your life, and you stick to that. And initially it may sound very hard, but actually it always pays off. And I've experienced that in my life, and so did my husband. He experienced it as well at work. And children actually will thank you later on in their life, as they move on and they fly the nest and they go on their own. They will actually be very grateful for all these good habits, the habits of getting up in the morning and chanting and singing their prayers, even though it may be quicker than normal due to their demands in college or school, but yet it's there, right? And also the eating habits also is very, very helpful. Then the last one in this section, I think, or maybe one more, is deity worship. And deity worship is very, very important for our children. Actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that in his book called Jaiva Dharma, he said that how deity worship is the foundation of religion for all humanities. He said that children who have been raised in without deities, without any form of the Lord, such children will have a tendency to become atheistic or materialistic because there's nothing to focus on, no form to focus on. Therefore, deity worship, he said, is the foundation of religion for all humanity. Because we can see that when we have deities at home or go to the temple, it helps the mind to focus on God. And we start seeing Krishna as a person. And children have a natural tendency to see Krishna as a person. They're naturally inclined to that. Just like girls, they like dolls, right? And they actually think doll is a person. Why? Because they're putting the doll to rest and they're feeding the doll. So in the same way, they see Krishna. When they serve deities or they serve Krishna dolls, they see Krishna as a person, which is very good upbringing. That's a very good training to grow up knowing that Krishna is actually a person. And this translates into good Vaishnava relationships all their life. When we actually see each other not as as just things, but as people, So and this is a very nice way, doing deity worship is a nice way to evoking natural love of God. And we see that in children, how when they grow up serving deities in some way or the other, it could be just doing an artik or cutting up an apple and offering to the Lord. They actually start thinking like, in that way, where they think about how Krishna is there and whether he's feeling comfortable, whether he's hot or cold. So this way, Krishna becomes the chief person in the house, the chief guest in the house. So for us, it was a lot of wonderful. It was a really good time in terms of when we did deity worship. I began deity worship when my children were 3 and 5 years old. Now, they were quite small. I was always there with them when they did deity worship, always there with them. And of course, my patience was tested because they would drop paraphernalia and water. But it was so rewarding because I could see that for 2 to 3 hours, they were so engaged, so focused, and they just enjoyed it so much. So they would bathe the deities. They had 4-inch gornitai, very little ones. They would bathe them, dress them, put on the jewelry. We would put them back on the altar. We would offer food and did artik. So we did the whole thing. And it really, so the children like to play, right? This is their main business, is to play and be creative through play. So this is a wonderful way. So this is a wonderful way to play with Krishna, such a positive way. Prabhupada said that we should not allow children to waste time. Waste time means just frivolous things which have no meaning. As far as possible, we should engage our children in Krishna conscious activities. We can take them wherever we go, so they're connected to all the devotional things we do, right? So Prabhupada said how they should play Krishna conscious games because Krishna is absolute. So when they play with them, Krishna is there. Krishna is actually there for them. So when they play games, they become Krishna and cowherd boys and a peacock and all these things. They're actually associating with Krishna. We should not make light of these things, because this is very, very important. And we see it in the lives of these great souls, right? Uddhava, Parikshit Maharaj, they all grew up with Krishna dolls and so attached they were. It said that in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada said that how they would be, Uddhava would be so immersed in taking care of his DD dolls is that he would not even hear his mother calling him. He was so immersed in these things. So before I go to our next section, the books of the basis, I was wondering, I'd open it up for questions in the first part. If anybody had a question on any of the slides that I explained in my first section, please feel free to ask. We'll allot about 10 minutes for this. Okay.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
My name is Radhika Mataji.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Today we all are very fortunate to have you, Mataji, because you're sharing your thoughts and your guidance to all parents. Much appreciated your services, because it gives me an immense support to me, because I have started for my daughter homeschooling this year. So so I'm really excited. Hope you understand my feelings.
Yeah. Yes, Mataji. I
Yeah.
know it's a very big step in one's life. It's a scary one, but because the norm is not to homeschool, the norm is so it's a big step for you, and I'm very glad that you've taken that step.
Yes, of course, Mataji. But we both are very happy for this decision. My daughter is so comfortable and she can do whatever she wants. And so as you said, all the whatever the parameters in Krishna's consciousness, she's going just like that. We all happy for that. Today, unexpectedly, I came to know your children also grew up in homeschooling. Yeah, that is really really a good support for me to know about all these things. Yeah, thank you so much, Mataji. Dandavad pranamams.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranams.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, one question is I has about that avoiding TV and limiting the internet. Due to COVID and things, like many of the schooling is also happening through online, and also like both the parents are working, so at least throughout the day we were not able to spend time with them. So in that case, how to engage them without getting them deviated towards TV and other entertainment aspects.
Yes. Prabhu, there's so many activities one can do for children with children. Playing Krishna conscious games is one way, and depending, on their interests, if they are interested in, a lot of girls are interested in things like, bead making and garland making, so many things, and even boys, they can do things like that. So there's many activities, just everyday activities, but dovetailing it to Krishna. Cooking, gardening, so many hobbies can be cultivated. They are much a natural way to live than trying to be in front of a screen. It is so detrimental to one's health as well as mental makeup. It's very bad. So if you can substitute that, just like in the Vedic times, children did what their parents did. It is actually very simple. They do what their parents do. So this is how I engage my children and kept them away from all these things, is that whatever I did, they did with me. And initially they may not want to, but then with time they get actually quite excited. When I cooked, they cooked with me. We celebrated festivals together. They celebrate all the festivals. There's so much to do, preparing for a festival, the cleaning, cooking, the altar, reading about Shastra, about them, about the festival, about the person that you're celebrating for. Maybe it's an Acharya disappearance day or appearance day. Maybe it's Krishna Janmashtami or Gaur Purnima, or so many festivals. Just about our calendars are full with occasions. And this is the way, is to get them excited about these things, read about them, then actually put it into practice. The life can be one thing after another. We used to go on book distribution. Even if you do 1 hour, maybe once a week, you cannot do more than that. Once a week, 1 hour, it just changes the whole scene. It just changes the consciousness. We used to do school programs. We'd go and talk about Krishna consciousness in schools, primary schools, elementary schools, like that. Prabhupada gave us everything. Everything can be within Krishna consciousness. And all the training will be positive when we follow that. When we do things, when we do outreach things, children learn so many things, like communication, right? Communication, how to deal with people, how to talk to them. Just, how to, we go to college and take so many courses on public speaking, debate, conflict management, all these courses we take in order to learn these skills. All this is given in all these, when we do these activities with our children. Right? We used to do, when they got older, we went and participated in all the, church services. Like, they would have Thanksgiving services and so many services. We would represent from the Hare Krishna faith. And even if they had to read out a verse from the Bhagavad Gita for 5 minutes, it was so inspiring for them, right? So look up the city calendar and see what's available there and start marking them. Start planning for them. See how you can fill up their day and weeks. We even went to the extent of doing prison programs once a month. We would go to do, and I know many parents are doing all these things. It's not just myself, and they're having wonderful results. So be creative. See how every situation in this world out there can be turned into pleasing Krishna, with Krishna on the focus. So they're still learning. In fact, devotees, they're more exposed to the outside world than other non-devotee kids. It seems like we are restricting them because we don't allow them to do this, that, or this and that, like other children are doing. But what we are doing is we are not allowing them to do the negative things that is going to be detrimental for them. So in other words, we are insulating them from those things. But we are not isolating them, because we are allowing them to be out there, but in a protected way. Okay, which child in America gets to, or in UK, gets to go to a prison program and see what it's like behind the bars? Would a child ever want to do a sinful activity ever again after seeing that firsthand? Very difficult, impossible. Right? Which child in the US or UK gets to participate in so many activities all the time? Going out and doing firsthand and doing programs, being out there on stage, presenting things. Our children get so much training right from day one, how to be a speaker, how to present with confidence. And then for those who like different handicrafts and arts and do things with their hands, it's unlimited. the painting, the artwork for Krishna, the garland making and cooking. So there's so much out there. Please try to see what you can do according to your time and your interest of your child, and also you look up the calendar. Don't be afraid. Take the plunge, and you'll see the results. The children's faith in Krishna and their identity as devotees will double, and they will forget all this screen time. Now, in terms of the schools requiring the use of television, yes, like I said, I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. So they would have to do that, but then they should be trained to turn it off. Okay. You should be aware that they're not spending too much time on that. Yeah. So they spend family time, spends family time. If the most you can do is do an artik in the evening, do that. Every evening after they come back from school. These activities which I just mentioned can be done on the weekends, right? If the children are going to school, you cannot do it on a weekday, but you can do it on the weekends. And during the weekdays, when they come home, make sure you do a little chanting. If you cannot do artik, at least sit and chant, and then read some Srimad Bhagavatam or do something nice about that. Or play with them, something meaningful. Give them all these opportunities and they will be satisfied. So Prabhupada said that we should not say no, no, no to them, because children tend to become rebellious. But we should give them the joys of Krishna consciousness. We should give them the positive rather than saying, you can't do this. Because naturally children will become rebellious. So we should be careful.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for the wonderful answer. I have one of the questions from one of the participants in the chat. If you permit, should I read up for you?
Yes, yes.
So it says, Hare Krishna Mataji, my question is, how can we focus in Krishna consciousness when both partners' thoughts are different and children see both parents, but then they copy the bad one most?
Yeah. Well, that's a very common problem where one either the husband and wife is very fixed devotee, but the other one is not so fixed. And this is a challenge that children and families have to face. However, this is something that is also part of life, and if you give what you can give, then children are very sharp and they're very intelligent, and they learn how to negotiate those differences. And there comes a point in their life where they actually have to decide, whether they want to be a devotee. If suppose husband or wife is not a devotee and at all, and just kind of tolerates everything, and then at a certain point they get to decide, oh, do I want to really become a devotee, right? Well, you have no control at that time, much control, but however, chances are, if you try to give in your best, that they will opt for being a devotee. So that chance is there. At least you're putting all the odds in favor of being a devotee to them and giving them the opportunity. Not that we fold up our hands and say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. I know one family in Boise across the street, and it was an American family, and she had 5 children, and the husband was not a devotee. And she raised them to be very fired up devotees, actually. And because he would be at work every day, and that's when her work would start, where she would read Shastra, they would do deity worship, and they were living across this temple. So they had all the access to all types of devotional things. And she was able to manage, and she kept very good terms with her husband as well, served him nicely, and kept him happy. That's what her Guru Maharaj told him. It told her that you do this and things will be okay, peaceful. So it can be done. Krishna consciousness is so versatile. Is something that goes straight to the soul. So it's not dependent on any material circumstances. So you try to do your best. It is a challenge, but try to do your best.
Thank you so much, Mataji. I think Amu Mataji has the question. She has raised her hand. So Mataji, you can unmute and ask.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
My question is, yes, as you said, homeschooling is good, but in this fast-moving world, will the kids be able to cope up with the new advancing technologies if we homeschool them?
Oh, the homeschooling. Okay.
Yes,
So,
Mataji.
well, I have many people are homeschooling, many devotees are homeschooling, and if you talk to them, they are they have no such experience where children are behind in all the, ways of the world. There's plenty. Material life gives us its share, whether we are homeschooling or not. And the children will be exposed one way or the other. Uh, we just do it in a protected way in homeschooling. But nevertheless, especially they're learning from Shastra, the nature of this material world. And it is a much better way to learn about this world through the process of hearing than actually experiencing it. But of course, the children who do go to school, it's not like they are, you know, the parents still take control of the things that they're exposed to whatever extent they can, right? So in a way, they do try to protect them. However, what I'm saying is, to answer your question, homeschooling does not try to limit them from anything. It doesn't limit the children from any knowing any technological advancement and all the things that is required for their for their future, because there's plenty of time. You can teach everything at home if whatever you need to.
Thank you, Mataji. And one more quick question. What I noticed is, like, my child is since 5 years, she has been into Krishna consciousness. And what I noticed from her is she is very soft because she applies each and everything related to what she is learning from Krishna consciousness. Even she is not gossiping. That is, I'm glad about it. I'm not complaining it. But the thing is, at some point I feel like she is not fit into her own peer group. At school, I believe that particularly now she joined into secondary school. Now I feel that she is literally a bit of struggling to fit into that peer group because of thinking everything related to Krishna consciousness, what Shastra says, and what we shouldn't do with. So how to cope up this material world into spiritual world, Mataji? It's really hard to balance it, particularly for the kids.
Well, if this problem is actually a good problem to have. In other words, if children are compassionate, kind, it's actually, these are very good qualities to have. Children eventually will fly the nest. They will go out into the world. But by giving them this initial devotional training, it really helps them to establish a strong foundation of developing good character, good qualities. Is very, very important. And like I said, in the lives of these great souls, the Pandavas and Parikshit Maharaj and all these great souls is like that. They first went to Gurukula to learn all these values, and then they were in the world, in the world. And they were able to apply those principles that they learned, those values that they learned in dealing with all types of things. As a king, you can imagine what type of things they have to deal with. It's really the world that they're dealing with, and so it's not true that when children, when they are gentle and Krishna conscious, that it's our own insecurity, our own lack. The problem is that as parents, we worry more about these things. There was one parent I talked to. I said, why are you allowing your children to eat meat? And he says, I really feel so sorry for them because they're sitting with all their friends and they're eating and she's not getting to participate with that. What kind of compassion is that? This is what Arjuna was chastised by Krishna, this kind of material compassion, right? So in other words, we should not feel that the children are missing out just because they're not doing so many things that others are doing. They will eventually, they will have to go out into the world, but they will make their choices more intelligently if you've trained them in this way. Okay. But how, so we don't want to make this into a homeschooling session, because I know there's a lot out there, a lot of parents over there who have, who are still plan to send their children to school. But yes, if maybe at the end of the session, we can have more questions on this, on homeschooling. I will be really happy to answer them. Okay.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So should we?
Looks like there is one more Mataji has raised hand. Vijay Lakshmi Mataji.
Okay, because yeah, we can move on. Other
Quickly, yeah, if
Hari
possible.
bol, Mataji. Thank you so much. Mataji, my question is, my daughter, she was never been in Krishna conscious. And this is very recently she has joined. And she is a teenager already. So how can I help Mataji?
Yes.
She's in year 10. So
Mhm.
probably 9 she joined the Krishna consciousness. So
Yes. Yeah, that's parents who came to Krishna consciousness a bit late. Their children naturally did not grow up in Krishna consciousness. However, not everything is lost. Okay, you give them as much as you can. Take them to the temple. Especially make sure that they have good association of other devotee kids, so that's where they really pick up a lot of things, and especially in the environment of a temple, where they can get to participate in activities, in volunteer work, in dramas, plays. That's where they build up that confidence, that faith that I am a devotee, and I like being a devotee. So, and in UK, you have all those facilities, right? You have the Pandav Sena and all these things, which is very nice. So you make sure that she becomes a part of that, and participate in all the peer activities. And the other thing is that try to encourage her, as much as you can at home. Try, and our next section is going to be about studying Bhagavatam with them. See if you can get her to read Bhagavatam with you every day and discuss it. That will really help, because children at that age, they need answers. They're questioning so many things. This is conflicting for them. They have another life, a different type of life in school, and then they come home and they're told a different set of things to do. So it becomes very confusing for them, right? So understanding that fact, we can study Bhagavatam with them, because Shastra with them, because that will help to put things together. Why things are different for a devotee versus for a karmi, and to develop that confidence that this myself being a devotee is actually far better. Okay, now it's going to be slow. She's not going to take right away to everything, but slow and steady. Gradually you take steps. She may be very distracted at this age, being a teenager, but then there will come a time, if you've given her exposure at home and outside, going to the holy dham once in a while, giving her whatever you can, then one day something will click, Krishna willing. Krishna has put these buttons in us, and he pulls one of those buttons, and suddenly we realize that, oh, this is where I want to be. I want to be a devotee. So, I would say try to do read Shastra, try to have a participate. Association is very important. Okay.
thank you, Mataji. Very enlightening.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you for all your wonderful questions, and we can take more questions at the end of the seminar on these topics. If you still have something, we will go to the next part of the seminar, and that is books are the basis. Now, this is the heart of my seminar, where I talk about how to develop attraction for Srila Prabhupada's books in our children. Now, most of us see that importance of is reading Shastra for adults, but few of us think how important it is for our children. And this is what I will try to present here, is how important Shastric education is for children. Bhakti Shastri is there, but that comes later, right? Children growing up as young children, they cannot study Bhakti Shastri. So how do we do that? At least up till the age of 18 or 16, we need to find ways to get them study Shastra. Right? Why study Shastra? It's because I'm going to read these quotes by Srila Prabhupada. Here, Prabhupada says, our students specifically, they should take care of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We have therefore prescribed in our school Dallas. And from the very beginning, if they begin education with Bhagavad Gita and then come to Srimad Bhagavatam and read the whole literature, then they will be more than MA, PhD. Even astronomy, astrology, politics, sociology, atomic theory, everything is there. Therefore, if you study Srimad Bhagavatam very carefully, then you get all knowledge completely. Throughout the whole world, whatever knowledge is there is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If one simply reads the Srimad Bhagavatam, his education is topmost. If one studies Srimad Bhagavatam, he is well versed in every subject matter. So there is a lot here where Prabhupada is saying that children should, actually in another place, Prabhupada said that how children should study English and math just so they can read his books. And then they will be more than MA, PhD. Because everything he's saying in these quotes that in Srimad Bhagavatam, this every subject matter is covered. Now, how is that possible? How can we find, chemistry and physics there, right? Well, when we hear about Krishna, who is actually the source of everything, we develop the intelligence to study all this. It actually is covered within the entire spectrum of the Vedas. The Vedas means knowledge, all knowledge. Whatever knowledge is there is in the Vedas. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of that Vedic tree. It's the essence of Vedic tree, which means that when we study Srimad Bhagavatam, all knowledge will come to us. Okay. So Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was stressing, like I said, mentioned earlier, that children, he wanted it introduced actually in the Gurukulas, and he, the study of Srimad Bhagavatam, he wanted it introduced there because he knew that this will help to develop good character. And that was really his main concern, is that children, he said that no matter what varna or ashram the children may be, but it's important that they develop good character. And we know the struggles that Prabhupada went through to give us these books. We know the story of how he first started translating these books at the Radha Damodar temple and under great austerity. And then, of course, when he came to America, when he boarded the ship, he was trying to distribute these books that he had printed, right? Even on the ship, he had a trunk full of books and that's all he had and a few dollars, right? And then he began his translation work, his major translation work in America. And as these books were coming out, the devotees were distributing them all the way till the ninth canto. As he was translating them and they were being published, the devotees were distributing them. And then, of course, he did the Krishna book. So why? Because this was really the heart of the mission of Srila Prabhupada. He knew that these books would actually revolutionize this whole, the whole world, because this will change the Kali Yuga mentality into Krishna consciousness. So we'll talk a little bit about the spiritual benefits that comes from reading Srimad Bhagavatam and how it comes, because children, as we know, they look up to adults, right? These children especially need good role models. And we see that in society, even in the world out there, how children are looking up to role models. There was one tennis star in America, very famous one, and he was like an ideal for young children. They looked up to him because he was such a good athlete. He was very good in his sports. And he was also good as a family man. He was faithful to his wife and, ideal in every way. And so all the ad companies, had taken him, hired him for their endorsement. And after some time, it was known that he actually was having extramarital affairs with another woman. And it's amazing how this created such an uproar, because all these people, especially children, were growing up idolizing this personality, and he had fallen away, and his wife was disappointed, and everybody at the advertising companies, they didn't want him anymore. So the whole thing was such a big gossip, and so much of news on this. So we see how, as we can imagine what it does to the
to the children and to the young people, how it in their image or their skepticism develops in looking up to good examples, right? Some children, they become skeptical. The others, they just follow them. They imitate them, and you can imagine the results that come from that, right? So children, but Krishna conscious role models, they're different, right? Because Krishna is part of the picture. Because it's said in the Bhagavatam how in this material world, there's no pure goodness. Whatever goodness that we saw in this tennis star very soon turns into passion and ignorance, falls down. Because there is no Shuddha Sattva here. Only in the transcendental level do we find pure goodness, right? So when children are dealing with Krishna conscious role models, these are the examples that they can actually live by and imitate in their life. I know in my own life, we were quite isolated in Boise because it's a way set out nowhere. And there were two sannyasis who were coming regularly. I know they had such a great impact on my children's lives. They would sometimes come for a week, or 2 weeks at the most. And the children would learn that time that they would spend with them had such a remarkable effect on them. The whole life was, because we as parents can give them only so much. But when children have models like that of personalities who have actually given up, all material desires, it has a great impact on them, right? So we need our children to have these role models for them. And what to speak of the role models in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Srimad Bhagavatam has great personalities like Parikshit Prahlad, Dhruva, Parikshit Maharaj, all these great personalities. And when children read about them, they get their association, they imbibe their character, and gradually, eventually, they learn the instructions, they follow the instructions. Actually, Prabhupada, in one place, he quoted Jiva Goswami as saying that actually every child can become a Parikshit Maharaj, a Dhruva. Why? Because just by reading and following them. And we see how children, when they read these stories, they want to be like them. They want to be like them. So they become like little saints, like one of you asked, that how come my children is so cut off? Well, they're like little saints. Why? Because they're hearing all this. So we have this demon side in us and a devotee side in us. So we are trying to give them this devotee side in them, right? Cultivating this devotional side in them, giving them this strong foundational. And then when the demoniac side, sometimes hits, it's okay. The devotee side, the devotee, Radhanath Swami called it the two dogs within us, the devotee dog and the demon dog. So when we inculcate this devotee, when the devotee dog becomes stronger, as we give them this foundation, so later on when they do get distracted and they give into temptations, this devotee side will be stronger, will come out stronger. But if we don't give them this opportunity of this foundation of good Krishna consciousness, strong Krishna consciousness, then the odds are that they will succumb to the other side, you see? So this is not brainwashing them. This is not isolating them. This is giving them the best opportunity. This is giving them the best facility. There's enough. You're not sheltering them from the real world. There's enough in the material world that's going to hit them sooner or later. You don't have to worry about that. What we do have to worry about is to give them this spiritual training. But it's a joyful process. It's not something that you have to put it down their throat. Okay, it's not like a school book type thing, schoolwork type thing. It should be a pleasant experience. And I'm going to talk more about that in my methodology of how we teach these our children Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. Now, in terms of character, I did want to give you some examples of some stories in the Bhagavatam which have a great effect. Now, qualities, qualities, I did talk about earlier about good qualities, good character. What are those qualities? Developing self-control, tolerance, right? Tolerance, mercy, compassion, all these good qualities. How do we learn these good qualities? Is when we see them in these great personalities. Now, some examples here about, for example, Parikshit Maharaj. The qualities that we learn from him is the quality of humility. You know, how he was such a great king, yet he was so humble, the way he took the curse without complaining, without retaliating, even though he had the power, you know, to do that. Yet he displayed good leadership, strong leadership when he met Kali, right? He wasn't, just because he was such a humble person, such a wonderful, kind-hearted, compassionate person, it didn't mean that he was not strong, right? He was a great leader. And when he faced Kali, he was ready to take care of it in a very strong way. He didn't want to. He was roaming around the entire kingdom, watching for things where Kali would be infiltrating within the kingdom, because it was his duty. He felt it was a duty to protect the innocent citizens from the effects of Kali Yuga, from the onslaught of Kali Yuga. So he wasn't a wimpy, right? He was a strong personality, but yet he had these wonderful qualities of compassion. You know, eventually when he shows his compassion to Kali by allowing her, right? So things like that. Then the quality of gratefulness. You know, we teach our children, we want our children to be grateful, right? For all that we do. We have to show gratefulness to other devotees for when they bring us to Krishna consciousness or when they preach to us, right? All this, where do the children inculcate these qualities of gratefulness and things like that? It's from these stories of Bhagavatam. We see in the story of Dhruv Maharaj, how he was so grateful to his mother, who maybe spoke to him like for a few minutes, giving him the right direction of how to seek the Lord and not revenge against his stepmother, not to be envious towards his stepmother, but instead to take shelter of the Lord. You know, by giving these few instructions, she changed his life. And how did he reciprocate? Even after 36,000 years, he did not forget her. He ruled for 36,000 years. And when the time came for him to go, he would not go because he wanted his mother to go with him. Right? So this quality of gratefulness, so wonderfully depicted in this story. Right? In Prahlad's story, his compassion towards his father, even though he was such a demon, right? All these qualities. So everywhere we can see the qualities of fearlessness in Vritasura's story. No, so these qualities are so easily taught from the stories in Bhagavatam, from Srimad Bhagavatam. And children actually accept them and they take it in their hearts. So the next section is the academic benefits from reading Srimad Bhagavatam. So we all understand that the ultimate purpose of reading Srimad Bhagavatam is to go back to Godhead, to become purified and go back to Godhead. That's where our original home is, and that's where the purpose is. But there's so many other benefits that follow from this. And that's because ultimately, like Prabhupada said in the first quote, Srimad Bhagavatam does not lack anything. You know, everything is there. So even materially speaking, one can benefit a great deal. Of course, these skills that are given here, these skills are not just used in our ability to be materially successful, but these abilities and skills can be used in our expertise as a devotee, in our expertise to understand the nature of this material world and how to live in it while preparing to go back to Godhead, to how to understand what is what, how not to take things blindly, you know, how everything, especially when our children are going to school, so many things will be presented to that child in such a convincing way, right? In such a convincing way. But by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, he or she will be able to apply the critical thinking skills to understand, oh, but what I've been given to this is not quite correct because this is not what Srimad Bhagavatam says. Because Srimad Bhagavatam is so rational, it's so logical that it convinces the intelligence. For example, Krishna and Arjuna in their dialogue with each other, it's not like whatever Krishna told Arjuna, he said, okay, Krishna, that's it. I just accepted. No, he was debating, he was questioning. He again asked question again and again till he was satisfied. So Srimad Bhagavatam encourages inquiry. It encourages inquiry and good thinking skills. So, and today you see how the world, the employers are looking for these skills, right? Gone are the days when things, one would just be, it's enough to memorize and to give it back in your examination. Now, what employers and educational institutes are requiring is these skills, critical thinking skills, how one can take information, and find, and think about it, find solutions for it, and to be able to give their realizations from it. So these are the skills they're looking, and they're clearly found in Srimad Bhagavatam. Well, and to speak about vocabulary, like Prabhupada said, is all MA, PhD. As we know, English is very, very high in Srila Prabhupada's books. It's amazing. And it can be easily taught through Bhagavatam, a lot easier than if we were to do it in the traditional way. For example, when you teach vocabulary to your children, you generally give them a set of words, right? And then he looks up in the dictionary and he finds the meaning and makes a sentence out of it. Well, it can be a lot easier through Bhagavatam because if you teach them in context. When you teach them in a sentence, in a context, then children learn the meaning very easily. For example, I was doing that with one child, and there was a sentence called, the whole place was drenched in water, drenched with rain or water, something like that. And I asked him, I said, what does it mean? He said, soaked. So in other words, the whole place was soaked in water. Drenched means soaked. So when you teach the child in context, and then it becomes a lot easier. And this is how I taught, and I know a lot of people are teaching, is through Bhagavatam. The child can pick up a lot of vocabulary. So now it's interesting how the subject matter another thing is that the subject matter in Srimad Bhagavatam is not dogmatic, that I just spoke about, it's rational. For example, in America, if somebody wants to become a lawyer, what they look for in the law schools is a degree in philosophy. They prefer the child to have a degree in philosophy. Why? Not because of the content, the philosophical content, but they're looking for the ability that the child may develop is through reaching philosophical solutions. The thinking process that it comes to when one reaches solutions, so philosophy, and that comes so well in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Because it's all about that. When we talked about Parikshit, why did he not, overturn the curse? Why did he throw a snake around the rishi's head? Was it wrong? No. Parikshit Maharaj's greatness was just not in the way he died, but the way he lived, right? So all these critical thinking skills are so developed and we can talk more about that, in our future slides, So we'll turn to methodology for teaching Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is something that I tried and many people are trying, and it works. And of course, you can develop your own system, what works for you. But what I suggest is that parents try to read some purpose ahead of time before taking a section of the Bhagavatam to read with them. Okay. So because when you read the purports, for the children, it becomes very hard to read purports because it is very time consuming and they may get distracted. So if you read the purports yourself and you note the points on the side, then you'll see that, then you can bring those points up for discussion. So you're bringing the purpose to the children rather than the children going through the purpose. I've done that for many years, and I still do that when I teach other children. It's just so effective. It's like an adult would read with the purpose, because you're giving them in a way that they can understand, in a way that a child can understand. And then that leads to a lot of discussion. And discussion is such an important part of study. In Vedic times, this was a process of schooling, was this tutorial process where there would be one teacher and a few students of different age groups. And they would spend time one-to-one discussing, or a few students and a teacher. And it becomes very effective because there's interaction, there's interactive communication between the teacher and the student. And that system is today followed in your country, in Oxford and Cambridge, right? And it's very, very effective. Now, what do we have? We have a teacher and students, about 30 students, right? And it's simply a monologue where the child loses interest. The whole Bhagavatam was a discussion between, the sages and Sutta Goswami, and it was a discussion. Why discussion is so effective? Because it sharpens the intellect. It sharpens the intellect because it forces the child to think. It encourages the child to communicate. Discussion means communication. It develops vocabulary. It brings satisfaction to the child when he's able to express himself, give his views, which are important. And it also encourages the process of hearing intently, because in order to discuss, you have to hear intently. You can't tune out, right? When you involve the child in discussion, you cannot tune out and forget. You can't, not listen. You have to listen. And this way you can keep the attention of the child throughout that whole hour that you read with them. You can keep that attention. And of course, next comes the process of reflection, where the child is able to reflect on what he reads and give his realizations. And that's the best part, my favorite part, because it's amazing. You cover the 5 chapters in the Dhruva section, and you ask it. Well, after every chapter, I would ask for realization. I wouldn't wait till all the chapters were finished. And it's amazing. The realizations, it actually would shock me. How small children, even as young as 6 to 8 year olds, can have such deep realizations. What to speak of older kids, teenage kids. Those very things that, one group of children that I was doing Dhruva story with, they told me they had read Dhruva story so many times growing up, right? But then when they did it in this way, they said, I didn't realize there was something so much to it. Right? When we were doing the Jay and Vijay story, there were so many, as you know, that story where the sages curse them to become demons. You know how the story goes back and forth, where they had cursed. They stopped the sages from coming. That's one side, and then the sages get angry. So who's right? The fact that whether they are right, the gatekeepers are right, or whether the sages right. We went back and forth so many times, back and forth. And they were just like, they were thinking, wow, my brain, is going to explode, right? And they were enjoying it. So it gives them a time to reflect. Okay, why did the sages anger? And isn't anger bad? So is this a case of good anger or bad anger? Oh, what story is there in the Bhagavatam which is a case of good anger? So there's good anger and there's bad anger. So we debated on that. Okay, is anger good or is anger bad? Like that. In the Dhruva story, we were debating on jealousy and envy. What is jealousy? What is envy? What is Suruchi display? So many things. So they're reflecting about things, right? They're applying these reflections in their own life. Anyway, so this becomes a very good system of, of evoking that questioning mind in the child, where he's able to apply this in his own life. The idea is that when he himself faces these challenges in the world, he's able to apply them in his life. Okay. So I'm going to take you through different age groups, how to teach Bhagavatam through different age groups. And with very young children, which could be all the way from 2 to even 4, when children don't know how to read, remember I talked about how we take turns reading translations and we keep moving and stopping for discussions. So since they are not able to do that, for very young children, we can show them pictures, tell them the story, pick out the details in the picture for very young ones. And for older kids, like 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, or even 3, we can read to them and try to make it very imaginative, very exciting. And this way we are able to create great imagination for them, and they're able to listen to the story again and again. Now, I remember when my children were young, I was showing them a lot of pictures, in Srimad Prabhupada's Bhagavatam. And in the early edition of the Bhagavatam, there were a lot more books, more volumes. So there were more pictures. And so they would just like those pictures so much, and we would go through them again and again. And don't think it's just wasted time or this, it doesn't have too much of it. This has a very deep effect on them because these stay in their heart. Then the 4 and 5-year-olds, this is the time when they're just learning how to read and they're not quite sure, so we can read to them. But I have this separate slide because I want to show you how even a 4 and a 5-year-old, how much he can understand and how much things can become very, very challenging for him, and how rewarding it can become for them. Because at this age, if they're reading from early on, they're able to take a situation and compare it, use comparisons, contrasts with other story, how much they can do that. They can do a lot of that. I'll tell you one experience that I had with my grandson when he was little, maybe 4.5 years old. I was doing some Bhagavatam with him on Skype quite regularly. And we were doing this Dhruva story, and the section where, Dhruva, the airplane comes to take Dhruva back to Godhead, and Nanda Sunanda was sitting there. Beautiful description of, the plane and these personalities. And when we were reading them, then, he told me, he said, Daddy, I want to go in that plane. I want to go back to Godhead. And I said, okay, that's very nice. And maybe one day you can. This is very nice. And then he said, no, but I want to go now. And I started thinking, and I was thinking, well, I told him, I said, if you want to go now, then you have to leave behind your mother and father. Is that okay? And then he thought for a little while, and he said, well, I'm going to wait because I don't want to make the same mistake as a Jamal did. You see? And this Jamal story we had read a long time ago, many, many months ago. But he remembered the lesson from that story, and he applied it in this story. You know the story of Jamal, right? When he fell down with a prostitute, but then when he came back to his senses, then he was regretting like anything. And he was regretting about neglecting his old parents. Why did I do that, right? So you remember that. So what I'm saying is that, and that's a 4.5, 5-year-old child. There was another child, a devotee's child, that I sat with 45 minutes, and I was able to engage. And I was reading the story of Bali Maharaj. How when Vaman Dev, he put his first step, he covered the entire universe, right? And it is said that how everything was covered under him. It was under his leg, right? And so then immediately that child told me, oh, it's just like Mother Yashoda. When she asked Krishna to open his mouth, then she saw herself in his mouth. See how he connected that? So it helps them to see that this is developing strong reasoning skills, strong comparative skills, right? And then when you teach them things like, the Vritasura story, right? How he was a demon, but yet he was such a great devotee. These stories, and Bali Maharaj, how he actually was a demon, but he was such a great devotee. They help to understand how not to judge people from how their birth or how they look at. Very good lessons in how we can have this universal outlook in life, how we can see each other as spirit souls. Very important. So this one is the older children, which is very much the same process that I just said, except we add more of the why and the how there. We don't talk so much about the story plot, what's happened. But in my experience, even the younger ones can be, I do a lot of why and how, right? Why did this happen? How did it happen? So these questions, which are not so factual, and these are open-ended questions where you may not find the answers right away, but you may not even find the answers. These are open-ended questions and discussions that you will only find in Srila Prabhupada's purport, and that will lead you to the purport to read, right? So this is and now I want to give you some really quick examples of some of the stories that I did with the and the kind of lessons they learned. For example, the Prahlad story. Just think of so many things that they're learning. So, like Prabhupada said, it covers every subject matter of the world. It covers everything that is available out there. Yeah, just in that section of Prahlad, there's so much to learn, right? We hear about this king who's very, very envious of his son, right? How he goes on a spree of killing, right? He's killing the cows, the brahmanas. So the child understands through this story what to make of this material world, how this material world is full of these self-serving people, right? But yet there's a devotee. There's Prahlad there. So Prahlad is the main character. He's like the thesis, right? When you do a thesis in your college, he's the thesis. And Hiranyakashipu is the antithesis. And Nrsingadev, he's the synthesis, where he brings everything together, right? So you're teaching your child through contrast. Okay, there's demoniac people, because it's scary to the child how people can be so horrible, right? They can make sense. What they've known is nice people around them, nice devotees, nice parents. So how do they see material life? It's through these shastras. And this is a fact. Why did Prabhupada not give us only the Krishna book? Why did he give us all the other cantos? Because we cannot appreciate Krishna until we understand the nature of this material world. Only then we can appreciate Krishna. Only then we can take shelter of Krishna. So we have to give to our children the nature of this material world. We cannot shelter them from this, but we do it through these beautiful stories, because through these stories, we'll be able to give them, through this contrast, we will be able to give them this nature of this material world. But how is a devotee? How does he deal with the material world? And how does he live in this world? And how he's always protected by the Lord. And for him, it doesn't matter where he is. So actually in the story of Prahlad, in the story of Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad is the hero, right? He's the hero. But in the initial few chapters, there's no mention of Prahlad. It's mainly the Hiranyakashipu and his qualities. So the children learn, during this pandemic, such a horrible situation where the children are cooped into their homes, not being able to, they're being told, it's so scary out there. My little granddaughter, she's hardly 3.5. She's understood that people are dying, and oftentimes she'll speak, when she went in the car sometime, one time, and she says, but I don't see people dying, like she was really like, it's really like so difficult for them, right? So how do you explain these things to them? Is through these shastras, these beautiful shastras where children understand, okay, well, this is it. This is how the nature of this world are. But there's Prahlad, there's Krishna. In the 10th canto, it's Krishna who's dealing with the demons. He's the one who's killing the demons. The devotees are not killing the demons. The cowherd boys are having fun. They're going into the mouth of Agasura and having the time of their life. Fearless, totally fearless, right? But it's Krishna. Mother Yashoda doesn't have to deal with that. So the child Prahlad did have to deal with. Nrsingadev came and killed him all and got rid of him, right? But what Prahlad showed was compassion for his demoniac father. In spite of all this, he's showing the element of compassion. He's so compassionate to his father. And he's fearless. He's preaching to him as well. So in this way, and then in the same story, we hear how Hiranyakashipu being very, very demoniac. He's killing all the cows. He's even killing the fruit trees and all the trees and the mines and everything. He's destroying everything right and left. Very much related to today's world, how ecology, how climatic changes and all these things. So you can relate everything to present day situation. That's why it's so practical, Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is known as timeless. It's not for one time and age. It's timeless, right? In other words, it can fit into any time, in any era. And we can see how today, yes, the trees are being killed. There's nothing pure left anymore, right? Everything's contaminated, because we're exploiting Mother Earth with all these artificial things, artificial fertilizers and all that. We're destroying the natural
Quick, Nana.
We're destroying the natural way a Mother Earth interacts with the cow. Yeah. Instead, we are putting cows in, meat packing places, killing them, separating her from Mother Earth. Whereas she's meant to provide manure for wholesome fruits and vegetables. So all these things can be taught in today's light, what's happening today. Okay, so this way, so a lot of questions that parents have in this area is that how do I teach the children about this, the demon father and the devotee child and things like that. So we have to understand when it's set in the perspective of Bhagavatam, it's very transcendental, and the child is able to discriminate. The child is able to negotiate those things. Well, this happened in the material life. Anybody who's envious of Krishna, and this we see in the life of Hiranyakashipu, anybody who's envious of Krishna will show that envy to other living entities. So this is this is the lack, is this devotion to Krishna. This is the problem, is this envy. And so that translates into harassing others, but not for devotees, not for devotees. So concepts such as, difficult concepts such as death, all this that is given in the Bhagavatam can be taught in a very positive, good way by giving the contrast, there's stories in the Bhagavatam in the 5th canto about different hells and the punishment, we should still go through them, and even in the 3rd canto, Kapila Muni talks about the different hells, right? So it's okay because we understand that to balance that, we understand in the Dhruva story how Dhruva goes back to Godhead. It was such a pleasant experience, right? And this is the experience that devotees go through. Actually, Krishna comes personally to take that devotee back to Godhead. And there's ample of stories in the Bhagavatam that shows that. So you teach them these things of how a sinful person is punished, justly punished, but in contrast with how a devotee, is dealt with at the time of death. It's very, very different. I read in the 3rd canto how Kapil Muni is explaining how when he's describing the situation for sinful people, he's talking about how these hells are actually places where the consciousness is trained into a lower species of life. In other words, as a human being, one cannot think like a dog. So if one has to get a body of a dog, one has to develop a doggish mentality. And this is the training one gets in hell. It's a very simple scientific process, but that's just for sinful people. Okay, so in this way, and through the analogies and metaphors that Prabhupada gives, it's very easy to understand these concepts as well. For example, this question about death is so nicely explained in that example that Prabhupada gives of a cat, catching a rat in its mouth and catching a kitten, right? So when it catches a rat, the rat is so fearful. He dies even before he eats him, just out of a heart attack. And when the cat carries the kitten in the mouth, the kitten is feeling bliss, very happy, right? Because it feels protection. So a devotee is like that. It feels protection in Krishna. Whereas a sinful person, he's fearful, like that. So just to give you the very extremes of Of course, most of the Srimad Bhagavatam is very, very, it doesn't have to deal with these topics so much, like that. So this is something that can be very successfully taught to our children. And of course, every subject can be taught so successfully about life's lessons, about grahastha life, grahastha life. So wonderful. All these children, we know that all these children are eventually going to become grahasthas, right? 99% of them. So how to teach them the values of household life and how to prepare for future is so valuable to be learned from Srimad Bhagavatam. Again, in many, many stories of good grahasthas. So many nice examples. Kardamuni and Devahuti, Prithu and Archie, like that. So anyway, let's see what time it is, because I wanted to leave a lot of questions for yeah. So I'm going to skip this. I had this a couple slides on, particularly on the story of Dhruva Maharaj, which I suggest will be a very a good story to begin with. Okay, to begin with, because it's a very easy story, and the lessons are easier. It's easy for a child to pick up, and then gradually to move to other stories, until the child is ready to begin from Canto 1, Chapter 1, okay? Because if you're starting out with Srimad Bhagavatam, starting right from the beginning is very, very difficult for a child to grasp. But, and so starting from this Dhruva story is very good. And so so nice lessons, easy lessons to pick up here, on the story of Dhruva, and the contrast between Suniti and Suruchi, and the king, how the king gets reaction, but Suruchi doesn't get. Why? So many wonderful, deep, deep lessons that one can show this in that story. And preaching is the essence is actually very, I'm going to make it very brief. It's very simple to understand why children should reach out to others, and should preach. Sharing Krishna with others develops a sense of identity, confidence, and devotional character. Because children are encouraged during this time to to articulate their thoughts on Krishna consciousness, and they learn great skills. When they have to articulate, convince somebody else of Krishna consciousness, their own faith develops, right? Their own faith develops. So it inculcates them all these skills of marketing, debate, communication, and conflict management. These skills are easily taught when children go out and reach out. And this can be done through book distribution, Harinam, college programs, interfaith services, temple and home programs. Temple and home programs definitely are a great avenue for developing these leadership skills in our children by encouraging them to participate in dramas and plays, and even give classes where they can, maybe in bhakti vrikshas. Children should be part of our life. We should not leave them, they should be very much we should engage them in different things. Not that we are busy in something and while the children have nothing to do, No, we should make sure that they are also engaged. We should have side-by-side activities for them so that they can also develop their Krishna consciousness and their skills. Actually, when my children were growing up, we used to have these programs, outside programs, school programs, and my children got an opportunity to speak out and to present Krishna consciousness. Well, when they were little, we did all the talking, but when they got older, they started themselves doing these programs, right? So even when they're little, they can stand up there and explain what they're wearing, what they're, the tilak on their forehead. They can do music, kirtan. So they can take frontline activities like that. And this way, they can be encouraged to speak, to show themselves as devotees. Very, very important. And as they get older, they can give classes. I remember in high school, we were doing, my children, we were doing high school classes, going to high schools, in other words, and presenting this Vedic culture to them. And this was happening every semester. And I remember this teacher, she was so impressed, and And she was so impressed. She says, the youth of your society is so wonderful, is so amazing, that how well they can present Krishna consciousness to others, right? This is the youth that people are so interested. When we train our children to present this philosophy, to become leaders in their own areas. And she was so impressed. And one time there was another devotee who came, a senior devotee, and I said, this time I'm bringing him to speak. And she was adamant, no. This is what my children need to see, the youth of your society presenting. So what I'm saying is that these children need to be out there. And I know in UK you have so many opportunities. I know that because I've been there. You have the Pandav Senas, and if you don't have enough, do it. Try to make groups, and don't be afraid of, making those, planning for those things. I would plan for them ahead of time, because you have to contact the schools and ask them whether they're okay with a presentation which will highlight the Vedic culture. You can call them up. Or what I would do is the children who are already in that school, taking part of that school, I would ask the parents of that school children to contact the teachers and ask them if they would like a presentation. So that's another trick you can do. If you cannot go directly to them, you can have the parents of that, children, devotee parents, to negotiate with them, with the teachers there and the school principal. And I always got an opportunity through that route, and gradually as people came to know about us, they would contact us, and so many opportunities. Sometimes they celebrate India Day, you can grab that opportunity, because our philosophy is so Krishna conscious. No matter how you try to make it, cultural, it invariably, becomes religious. And it's amazing how much they have so much curiosity in that, then eventually, they may begin very tight, but then they loosen up and they ask all kinds of questions which are all Krishna conscious. And of course, prasadam always does the trick, right? And music, the chanting, it really, brings everything together. We used to have, and I remember when the children would come back home doing this, they would be just so inspired, because they've given Krishna to others, and they would become so confident, more and more confident every day about who they were. So I can't talk enough about the benefits of reaching out, how important that is. And I can say with all, confidence that a lot of my, whatever, success I had, little success I had, it was because of these extracurricular activities, putting them out there, doing prison programs. And this is what Prabhupada wanted. We have a preaching movement, right? This is a preaching movement. And inculcating in our children this becoming fearless, inculcating in them the spirit of fearlessness is so nice, and this will permeate throughout their lives. So I just want to take a minute to tell you about the resources that's available out there. It's the Homeschooling Krishna's book is a guidebook on the art of parenting, homeschooling. And it's even though it's called homeschooling, all the ABCs of parenting is also there. And all the things that I've talked about is also in that book. And then, like Prabhu mentioned, this Srimad Bhagavatam, a comprehensive guide for young readers. We just completed Canto 4, and it's going to be available in about a week's time. So, and we are now working on Canto 5. So all these 4 cantos are available. And like I mentioned earlier, they have many, many activities which are being done by many devotees around the world. They are, creating resources that we're putting it all together. We work on 1 chapter a week. So 1 canto takes us about maybe 8 months, depending on the number of chapters. And it's actually a lot of hard work that goes into it. And many of these activities have been tried out by parents and teachers. So, in fact, these books are being used by the Mayapur International School in Mayapur and also by the Vrindavan International School, the Gurukula there. And they are using it as their curriculum books. Vrindavan School is using it as their curriculum books to teach their children English as well as Shastra through these books in their middle school children. Yeah. Mayapur, and they just started introducing it to the primary schools. Since these books can be adapted for all ages, all the way from 6 to 7 years old to 16 or 18 years old. I know many adults are using these books to make the subject matter simpler for themselves. So try to use them and take advantage of them, please. And yeah, and they are available on UK Amazon. So our next is questions. If anybody has questions on the second and third part of my seminar, please feel free to ask. I know I'm a little bit over time, but
Haribol Dandat Mataji, I will take the opportunity to ask.
if people want to turn on their video, I'm happy. I'm fine with that. I like to see faces. If you cannot, don't, yeah, it's okay. I'm saying just in case you can, go ahead and. If you cannot, don't worry about it. Go ahead. Yes.
So Mataji, my question is like, while we are discussing about reading the Srimad Bhagavatam with children, I had been trying it couple of times and I would not say I'm successful. Like I had been listening to your seminars on it, but the challenge I'm facing is especially when the kids are going to the regular school, they're coming back by 3:30 and then they have some other lessons. I have 8-year-old children, so I mean, like they have other lessons as well. So what happens is either I get only the time on the weekends, an hour or so, or sometimes late in the evening when they're actually very tired. So I'm not able to put it in the regular curriculum for them. And when I realized that this is the problem, because when during the lockdowns the schools were like we were just having the online learning, we would get ample of time to read it, and for 3-4 months we could do it an hour daily and I could see the difference. But once the schools are open again, I could see that I'm not able to carry on in the similar way. So what would you suggest in that case?
Yes, yeah, I know it's a real struggle because they're in school 8 hours a day, and then they have homework probably, right? And they need some time to play, and stretch out and things like that. So I would say just try on the weekends then. Maybe Saturday and Sunday you can try on those days, and do it just twice a week. At least anything is better than nothing, you see. Whatever time you can give for Srimad Bhagavatam is so valuable. So, yeah, try on the weekends. Or you can, if you have really a desire to do it on the weekdays, maybe you can do 15 minutes, maybe read one verse.
That is what I'm trying at the moment, but it's not very because they are too tired and we don't discuss much, but I still read them the story and a little bit questions. But in a very small, just 15-20 minutes is what I'm able to do at the moment.
That's good. That's good. That's very good. I remember when they were very little, I was reading them the Lilamrit while they would lie in bed, the Prabhupada's Lilamrit. So you can do, you can do 10, 15 minutes, because if that's how they'll take it, then, this is the only time you have then. Yeah. Okay.
Mataji, can I ask a small one more question?
Yeah. I mean,
it is from the we'll take it quickly. I know there are many more devotees, but just from the first part of the seminar, wherein you would saying that we should reduce the internet and the TV time. But sometimes what happens in the age group of 8 to 10 years, when kids feel like they have grown up and they have actually not, and they feel like all my other friends, they are getting to play these video games. Why can't we play it? So, and I don't want to present it in a way like because this is how we follow that we should not be doing it, but I try to present it in a logical way. I show them like some scientific facts, but they are like, all my friends are playing, I really want to do it. So how can I present this thing to in that age?
Yeah, if you tell them how bad it is, this is just for the parents to know that how bad it is, right?
Yes.
But if you tell them how bad it is, they're not going to appreciate that, because they can't think like that right now. So what you do is you give them something better to do. It's like the higher thinking process. We give the higher, when we get into the higher thing, higher taste, higher taste, and then the lower taste goes away, right? So if you'll have to find something which is more interesting for them during that time, and that way they can give up wanting to do that, So it has to be something, some creative. You'll have to creatively think how you can, give the more positive thing by which they can spend less and less time on media. Like engaging.
Thank you so much, Mataji.
Like engaging them, I remember, we had to have a preaching center in our own home and gradually became a temple. I would remember that we'd spend a lot of time practicing dramas with all the other kids, and they would have to write the script and they could because they were writing the script, they had to spend more time with it and they would get really excited and, and wanting to, so that this was a very fun way for them to spend time, is writing scripts and becoming directors of the play or something, so there's so much excitement, in Krishna consciousness. You just have to find them, like festivals. There's so much excitement, try to initially it may be like, oh, I don't want to do it, but when they get into it, they become attracted, So how to prepare for a festival? Maybe I know with my children, I did a lot of deity dressing and deity worship, and that became very absorbing for them, where they actually had something with their hands, to do. With their restless minds, became more controlled like that. So maybe others can think of other and share, different things that you can engage them with. They're only 8-year-olds, right? So they're still very little. And it's easy to draw them away at this age than when they become teenagers. Then it's harder, So grab them now, give them higher taste now, as much as you can,
Thank you so much, Mataji, for wonderful answers. Thank you.
If they want to watch, then maybe a something devotional rather than something, like you don't want them to be exposed to video games and things like that.
Thank you, Mataji. Dandads.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
One question, Mataji. If the parents, one parent is on initial stage, other parent is advanced in Krishna consciousness, in that time the kids will impact because other parent is not interested on the kids activities to do and Krishna consciousness related activities, and one parent them to push them that, and how to handle that kind of situations.
Yeah. Well, that's always a struggle. Well, you can try to do what even in a karmi activity, you can try to help them change their consciousness, maybe help them to understand. You can actually dovetail pretty much everything to Krishna consciousness, so in other words, trying to find meaning in whatever they're doing is another way of trying to adjust to that situation where you cannot change the nature of that activity, is trying to make the best use of a bad bargain like that. So trying to dovetail it to Krishna. So that's why I'm saying that when you do have time with the children, make it very quality time, okay? When you do have the children for yourself to inculcate Krishna consciousness in them, then use that time fruitfully, okay? And that means, reading Shastra with them, because that will really help to, feed the intelligence to be able to discriminate, oh, well, sounds better. This is actually, and for them to develop good taste, better taste. You cannot do much. Maybe you help us during certain times of the day, but I'm sure you have times where you can, give them Krishna consciousness in a more effective way. So use that time.
Okay, Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. I have got a question, Mataji.
Yes.
Dandavat.
Mataji, my kids are teenagers,
Mhm.
and I know it's never late, but I couldn't do much with my kids with Krishna consciousness. But uh, as I said, it's never late. So I want to inculcate whatever I can. I know they are difficult at the moment, and they are at the age that you can't sit them and tell stories or make them read or read with them. It's a bit difficult, Mataji. So what suggestions do you have, please?
Yes, yes. Like I mentioned earlier, take them, at least maybe they will go to the temple. They need more association with other peers, who are devotees. That has a great effect on teenagers, when they have friends who are devotees. That has a very big effect. Maybe they can join a Pandasena or something, something where they feel more enthused, because they generally don't want to listen to their parents at this point, and maybe a little bit, and engage them on the activities that they want to engage, that they like engaging at home, like maybe cooking with you or something, and others. And outside, you can take them on events that they may like. You have to see where their interest lies, and what you'll get a hunch. Oh, well, I think this will work for her. So like that, and you try your best. Go take her to bhakti brikshas, or where there's a smaller crowd. Sometimes take her to temples. Have her see if she can volunteer. Maybe she likes to volunteer time to do some seva in the temple.
Yes, Mataji. Yes, but it's like struggle more with boys than girls.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I know. Again, then he needs association of other devotee boys. You know, maybe you can find a group where he can hang around with them, just to get the feel that, wow, this is cool. This is cool. To be a devotee is really actually cool. So a group like that really helps, because then they at least get themselves to the point where they can see themselves as devotees. At least bring them to that point where they can see, well, it's not so bad to be labeled as a devotee. They are having so much fun. Take them on a trip, have them join a trip of young people, or some trip where they're having fun and playing, tennis or something together. Just like I said, the association of other young children will really help you in this process. Take them sometimes to the holy dham, something that that, like I said, Krishna is going to pull on one of these buttons one day, and they're going to see it. But yeah, but I would definitely recommend association for them.
Sure, Mataji. I'm trying, Mataji.
Yeah, I know. I know. Initially, they just resist everything. They think it's weird or
Yes,
different.
yes,
Yeah,
Mataji. Because in school and in they have got different circle and everything. It's different, Mataji. So if you try to make them understand like what we understand from spiritual background, what we have experienced, it's very difficult for them to even understand sometimes.
yeah. Don't preach to them. It generally at this point by now it doesn't work. Don't preach to them, because they're
Yes,
just going
Mataji.
to run away. What you have to do is to try to do it through other avenues.
Mm-hmm.
But they tend to listen to that more than you, because it's kind of late now, a little bit late, but not hopeless though.
Yes, Mataji.
Because they are
Just
still,
Krishna's mercy.
yeah, exactly. They're living with devotee parents. They're eating prasadam every day, and that's very powerful.
Mataji, I'm only Krishna conscious at the moment. So it doesn't help either. So, but I can try.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you get in touch with your respective circle leader, they will be able to guide you actually in the respective, devotee kids groups with the same age.
Yes, yes, Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you, Mataji. It's really nice to have a chat regarding this point.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. That was a good suggestion.
Yeah, I could see few hands raised. Aishwarya Mataji, Shrikant Prabhu, and Amit Agarwal Prabhu. So you can take. few more questions, if that is okay with you, Mataji. I mean, seeing
Yeah.
your time also, your
Oh,
schedule.
no. I have time. No problem. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mataji.
Mataji, Haribol, thank you so much for this lecture. Amazing. A lot of great insights there. I really enjoyed the whole session, especially the second part where you taught us about the approaches to get kids involved. Right. I'm going to ask a very, kind of a dilemmatic question. It's even for me, not just for my child, it's even for me, right? I am well, most of the parents here probably are working. Both of them are working, and both of them, have this 7-8 hours and are trying to get involved in Krishna consciousness themselves and trying to read books themselves and learn themselves. Well, from what I have actually absorbed from what you have told us now, that you as a family have been really aware of the Krishna consciousness and the books, the spiritual masters, the teachings, the lineage. Although we are kind of introduced to it, we know what to learn, and we know there is a lot of literature that needs to be learned. We are all trying. I'm trying my best to kind of learn a lot about Chaitanya Charitamrita or Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam. How do I actually balance my time of learning to inculcating this learning to my kid? And it's a very tricky one, actually, because not only my learning ties up to the relational aspect of the last part that you taught us about, how to relate things of one story to another, to life situations, and actually mold them or shape them into character, good character, and humility and tolerance and all of that. It also kind of it takes me deep into my learning process as well. But then it's just too short. The time is just not there. Even if I try to make it, it's just not there. How do we balance that? How do you feel in the end? Satisfied, like, okay, I've done my best. There seems to be this gap that's always there. Oh, I could have done more and I've not done enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good question, Mataji. Yeah, now one thing in terms of how to balance your own learning with the need to teach your children. Now, when I was homeschooling them and I started the Bhagavatam with them, I was a fairly new devotee myself. So I hadn't read, I just read a few books, small books of Prabhupada. So Bhagavatam, when I sat down with them, I was also reading with them for the first time. So it's okay to read it with them for the first time if you can, because you will grow as they're growing. However, your growing is going to be different because you have life's experience that they don't have. And so even if you don't know Bhagavatam, what you will be able to give them is going to be far more, very valuable to them, you see. Then if the children were not to get it at all, or they were going to do it on their own, which they probably won't, right? So don't be afraid of doing it with them and being a new devotee, because that's when the fun is. When you become a new devotee or you are fairly new devotee, then one is really inspired. One has to really watch when we become a devotee for many, many years. That's when we slip, right? We take things for granted. So that was my situation. I was fairly new devotee and I was very inspired and energetic. So I wanted to, do what I could. So that's one thing that, and in terms of time, how to balance everything and time, you try. Well, this is, we will always feel a lack in terms of wanting to give our children the best, and we're not really, but we fall short, right? But that's okay. It's the key thing is not to be dissatisfied or frustrated because of that. Because whatever you give, how Krishna, he preserves what he has and he gives what we lack, right? So that's the job of Krishna. We do what we can. Krishna sees that sincerity in us, and then he provides whatever is lacking. That's why we see when being a mother or father is such a wonderful seva. We're reading is such a precious seva because we are training our children We're giving them the tools by which they can become such wonderful devotees and good citizens as well, right? So in this way, we have a very honorable seva, you see. So we should not see it as anything minuscule what we are trying to give. So if we can give only a little bit, well, that's good. Whatever we can give, we have to be satisfied and just pray to Krishna that he can fill up the rest. Okay.
Thank you, Mataji. Haribol.
Shrikant Prabhu.
Krishna Mataji, thank you very much for the wonderful class. My question is like I had two questions, but one question you just answered actually, like how to encourage like kids for reading. Prabhupada books were you on already answered. So other question, Mataji, like when like I have my son, like when he was watching TV too much, we restricted him, but at the same time, like we are engaged with our work, and then we don't like what we did is like we asked him to see Mahabharata, Biyachupa Mahabharata or Vishnu Purana, and then he started watching those things episode after the episode, and he finished quickly, and he gone on to another one and another one. He was watching only devotional related serials and series now. But is it still okay to allow him, Mataji, like or is it also not good?
Well, once a week as a family, if you were to sit together and see an episode in Mahabharata, that's okay, and that too for half hour, right? And then you can continue the following week. Like, you can set out a time, where, okay, we're going to watch together Friday night, this time to this time, maybe an hour, that's it, But to have him do more frequently than that is just not a good idea. Even though they are devotional movies, at least it's better than non-devotional things. However, like I mentioned earlier, the negative side of screen time in terms of this one-way download and being addictive, it's just not healthy. Physically or mentally, it's not a healthy way to live. Is to watch every day, to have screen time every day. See if you can get him involved in more meaningful things during that time. Now, just imagine if he had a hobby, some kind of good hobby, what by the time he gets another few years from now, how valuable that skill is going to be, and that how he can use that skill in Krishna consciousness. You see? The time that we spend in front of the screen is pretty much wasted because we're not really developing any skill, any skill. Better we read the book on Mahabharata by Krishna Dharma. We can read that one. It's so much better rather than watching it on TV. Give him that book. Let him read that. If he really likes Mahabharata, you can give him Ramayana or Mahabharata. It's still better. It's still better than screen time. You see, because at least it's more healthy. His skills, he is going to be more, creative, and also he's going to benefit more overall.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Thanks.
Like Amit Prabhu and Swati Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Mataji. Thank you very much for the very wonderful session. I have a 2-year-old, so basically when I saw the slide of 2 to 3-year-old, so I think now I've been inspired by that slide to recite the stories to my 2-year-old. Yeah. So my question is like over here in London, we are also having kids Bhakti Vriksha. Over there, children from 3 years till 12, 13 years, they come. So looking at this material as well, is there some like these books are looking very promising and very curious to see these books as well. but also do you have like a kind of a structure where like from level 0, then level 1, level 2, to take gradually from that level to the kids, basically, depending upon the complexity, like?
Yes. So these books are designed for starting from Canto 1 is easier than Canto 2. Canto 2 is easier than 3, and like that. So it moves up in the age, in the understanding. So so you would start from Canto 1 and then move on to 2, 3, like that, and it will be more and more challenging. The activities will be more and more challenging as you go to the next canto. That's how it's designed. However, the subject matter, the activities can be adapted to children, older or younger. You know, uh, yeah. So if your child is 8-year-old, he can do those, not all the activities, but he can do activities for that's given there, which would be suitable for him. You see, and then you leave out the other. Then you go to the next chapter. If something is very difficult, then you can leave it out, or you can adapt it. You can just change things around. For example, if there's a question that you feel that is very challenging, you can substitute it by something simpler.
Okay.
Yeah, just like if suppose there's some language activities too, like for
हेलो
example.
योगेश प्रभु जी, सॉरी मैं बीच में बोल लूंगी। जय श्री कृष्ण माता जी। हेलो योगेश प्रभु जी।
हरे कृष्णा।
हरे
हरे
कृष्णा।
कृष्ण। योगेश प्रभु जी, माता जी को हिंदी आती है?
या आती है।
अच्छा अच्छा माता जी, मैं बोल रही हूँ कमलेश यादव। हरे कृष्णा माता जी।
हरे कृष्णा।
हम हरियाणा से हैं माता जी। हमने भागवत जो कुछ मिला संपर्क में वो सब किया, पर आजकल के बच्चे छोटे हैं, इतने ही रख लो अपने पास में जो आपने बताया। अब जैसे ही बड़े होते हैं, अपना रूम, अपना मोबाइल, अपना सब कुछ होता है। बच्चों को समझाना, मैं तो जैसा मेरा एक्सपीरियंस है, बहुत मुश्किल है। हम जब हमारी उम्र थी या ये योगेश प्रभु जी की उम्र है, इसमें सब माँ बाप का, सब रिलेटिव का कहना मानते थे। ये आजकल बच्चे 9, 3:30, 4 बजे तक स्कूल में रहेंगे। ये तो लॉकडाउन की वजह से यहाँ है, माँ बाप के संपर्क में इतना रहते नहीं। और फिर मंदिर मंदिर तुम ही जाओ, ऐसे साथ नहीं जाएंगे हैं। और माता जी फिर क्या होगा कि अपना फोन, लैपटॉप, अपनी दुनिया में गए। ये मुट्ठी में जो दुनिया दे दी ना, ये हमें तो अच्छा नहीं लगता कि मुट्ठी, ये जरूरत की चीज थी कि कोई दूर चला गया, फोन कर लिया, फंस गए, या कोई अपनी इमरजेंसी की बातें, जैसे भी था। अब बच्चे ना कोई सास चाहिए, ना कोई ससुर चाहिए, लैपटॉप में खाना, लैपटॉप में सारी चीज। अब आप बताओ कि कोई ऐसी चीज है कि जो बच्चे को हम सिखाएंगे? और भागवत बच्चे पढ़ेंगे? हम खूब कहेंगे भागवत पढ़ो, गीता पढ़ो, कृष्ण लीला बताते थे हम बच्चों को छोटे में, हैं। अब ये बच्चे आजकल के कलयुग के बच्चे हैं, ये बड़े मुश्किल से रास्ते में लेकर आने होते हैं। माता जी क्या करें इन बच्चों के साथ, बड़ी मुश्किल है। ये कोई भाग्यशाली या पुण्य उदय होते हैं, उनके बच्चे भाई धर्मात्मा बनेंगे, पुण्यात्मा।
थैंक यू माता जी। तो आपका प्रश्न, हरे कृष्ण माता जी, तो आपका प्रश्न उसके हिसाब से है कि बड़े बच्चों को कैसे सिखाया जाए, मतलब जो बच्चे बड़े हो गए हैं, वो जो राह से अलग हो गए हैं, ऐसा कह रहे हैं आप? ओके, थैंक यू फॉर क्वेश्चन।
यस, जो कि मैंने अभी कहा कि बड़े बच्चों का तरीका, जब अगर उन्होंने शुरू से इसके तरफ नहीं ध्यान दिया है, क्योंकि ऐसा मौका उनको नहीं लगा, तो फिर सबसे उनको मंदिर किसी तरह एसोसिएशन में लाना है, और बच्चों के से जो इसमें हैं, जो कर रहे हैं कृष्णा कॉन्शियसनेस, उनको उस एसोसिएशन में लाना है। क्योंकि इस उम्र में उनको बहुत मुश्किल है घर वालों के सुनने के लिए, वो सुनते नहीं हैं।
तो जब लेकिन बाहर का कोई सुनाएगा या कहेगा और उसके संग करेगा, उनकी तरह दिखेगा, आजकल के दुनिया में सब बच्चे जो है अपने उम्र के बच्चों के संग रहते हैं ज़्यादा, उनके तरह बात करते हैं, उनका अलग से लैंग्वेज होता है, तरीका होता है बात करने का, उनका अलग से कपड़े पहनने तरीका होता है, उनका अलग से म्यूज़िक होता है, तो उनकी दुनिया अलग हो जाती है। तो उनको वापस लाने के लिए उनको उनका संगत बदलना पड़ेगा। वो तो स्कूल जा रहे हैं तो वो संगत तो रहेगा ही रहेगा, लेकिन उसको काउंटरैक्ट करने के लिए थोड़ा इस तरह का भी संगत देना पड़ेगा उनको। और फिर क्या होगा, फिर धीरे धीरे जब ये संगत बढ़ेगी तो वो वाली घटेगी और उनको फिर इस चीज़ का वैल्यू धीरे धीरे पता चलेगा। तो और एसोसिएशन होना चाहिए और बड़े भक्तों का, जो कि प्योर डिवोटीज, शुद्ध भक्त जो होते हैं हमारे संस्था में, सन्यासीज वगैरह, उनका एसोसिएशन भी बहुत ज़रूरी होता है बच्चों के। उनका एक मोमेंट भी एसोसिएशन बच्चों के ऊपर उसका असर हो सकता है। तो अब वो भी किस तरह उनको लाना है उस एसोसिएशन में, वो भी चैलेंज है। लेकिन अगर घर पे प्रोग्राम्स करें आप लोग, जिससे हो सके घर पे जो करें तो उसका असर दूसरा होता है वनस्पति मंदिर, क्योंकि मंदिर कहते हैं हम नहीं जाएंगे। तो घर पे करने से क्या होता है, जब भक्त घर पे आते हैं तो फिर उसका असर अलग होता है, क्योंकि उनको सेवा करने का मौका मिलता है, उनको ज़बरदस्ती उनका एसोसिएशन मिलता है। तो वो भी है कि अपना घर खोलने से जितना भी कर सकें तो उसका भी असर बच्चों में जाता है। और प्रसादम देने में, भगवान से प्रार्थना करने में, ये सब फैक्टर्स भगवान सुनते हैं। ये एफर्ट, सिंसियर एफर्ट जो हम लोग लगाते हैं अपने बच्चों के लिए, ये बेकार नहीं होता है कभी। धीरे धीरे जैसे होता है ना, बूंद बूंद से फिर एक दिन बहुत बड़ा गड्ढा हो जाता है। तो मतलब कहने का कि इतना धीरे धीरे करके कुछ ना कुछ भगवान उसमें सहायता करेंगे।
Thank you so much, Mataji. I think Swati Mataji and Radhika Mataji is raising hands now.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Danvas Pranam.
Danvas.
Hare Krishna Mataji. My question is actually extension of Mataji who just asked the question. My daughter is now, she's going to turn a teenager this year, time between 12 and 13 years. And the change I have seen is she wants a lot of time with her friends. So pehle they used to go to school, meet them, come back. Now mobile is a tool which connects her to her friends like all the time. She wants to speak to them. Even while she's doing her homework, my friend is helping me. And we used to study with a book, a rough copy, paper, pencil. Now they're studying online. So I want like practical tips where I can first, literally, I want like screen time lock, take away mobile, but there is a lot of resistance. So what I want to understand, kitna discipline, like we want to be their friends as well, so that they can share everything, bina dare or aram se. But that disciplining, that is difficult for me, because up till now, I think I was in control. Now when she is turning a teenager, I'm seeing she is in control, like, yeah. So what should we do?
Yes, definitely you want to, Prabhupada said that between 10 and 15, one has to be as strong as a tiger. That's what Prabhupada said, So in other words, we cannot allow the children to do certain things, because it will be too late. It's too late then. But starting 16 years of age, we become their friend. So it's still in that age group where certain steps you could take, which may help in this process. Now you're the parent, you're the best judge, but for example, in terms of phone, I think on the whole, we give
the phones too early to our children, you know.
Yes, Mataji. Here, like the moment they go to secondary school, they start traveling to school and coming back from school themselves by bus or walking. So that's the reason we have to give, and that is like when they go to year 7. But that, we give them that for their security. And
Yeah.
when the COVID period came, that line that was drawn, that became blurred, and everything became Zoom lessons and Zoom classes and Google classes. So some way along, now I realize that like really strict disciplining, I mean, she's very wise, but I mean, just so that there are no problems in the future for teenage children, yeah, I want to understand that. So you're saying that as parents we should be very strict. That's
Yeah.
what Srila Prabhupada
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. In other words, not strict to the point where it's suffocating or anything, but definitely be strict, because it's going to be, she could make mistakes which would be very difficult, you see, to go back. So what I'm saying is that yes, this is the time where, like for example, phones, what is those flick phones, where there's just the phone. We used to have it in the early days where it was a smartphone, where you just dial and call. Those phones are okay in terms of, being able to dial. Uh, and those, and they have, I know many American parents, they've given their children access to that and taken away the smartphones. You see?
Okay, Mata. And one thing also, like especially for nuclear families, first generation who have just come for work, and their first generation, we don't have the privilege of having their grandparents with us.
Yeah.
That, like, because most of the mentoring for me came from my grandparents when my parents were busy earning the livelihood, or my mother was busy in the kitchen. So that association is totally missing, and yeah, that
Yeah.
effect creates a big
Yeah.
vacuum.
Yeah, with the onset of different time, getting into Kali Yuga, it's getting, families are getting smaller and smaller. And so more and more burden is placed on, one family, and also sometimes even one of them out of the two. So yes, those things are just the facts of life, and they make things more and more difficult. I would suggest that that's why it's very hard when even both parents work. It's much than if one parent were to work. It's a lot easier. And if one can do that, then that was actually would be a lot better, because then you have more time to spend with your children, and you're not so tired. So yeah, so I mean, spending time with her will be very valuable at this point. Again, spending time, reading Bhagavatam with her, or chanting together, kirtan together, and I probably, she has good association.
Mataji, she has good association, but everything has become virtual. And it is the time where from baby she's becoming this teenager, so that is difficult for us. And it's now almost an year everything became virtual, mid-March from last year. So that's why yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could, now that COVID is going pretty much, then things will change. And definitely her access to the phone and being so dependent on it, we should definitely reduce, because there's so much in there which can be very damaging. That's the problem.
Yes, Mataji. And the influences are not always right from school.
Yeah.
Though she's in a girls' grammar school, but still so many things are going on, and they are chatting. All these WhatsApp and Telegram and all these are all new challenges for us parents, and how to restrict and do it in a harmonious way, and that's a big struggle.
I mean, it's, giving her access to a phone 24/7 is not a good idea. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, Mataji. Yes.
Not a good idea, because I mean, I like I said, I just read you one case of
Yeah.
a teenager who was really regretting that she had access. So of course, as coming from Indian families, we have more time for our children. So where we kind of watch out, watch and be more careful. But still, it's a situation where it could be quite difficult.
Yes, Mataji.
Krishna
Thank you
Mataji.
so much. Thank you.
I just need to plug in here. Just give me one.
All this TikTok, Facebook, WhatsApp, every year there is a new app, and before we come to know when the children start using it. That's the case here. So it's quite a struggle. So limit phone access. I'm going to do that.
Hare
Good night.
Krishna,
Bye. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Sorry to interrupt. Many thanks for the beautiful session. Just want to put an insight into what Mataji just mentioned. I'm sailing in the same boat. Probably my boat is more in turbulence than hers. So what finally worked for us as mom and dad for a 17-year-old is that we have started switching off the Wi-Fi. So we switch it off. Yeah. And for good 2 months, she didn't realize what happened. And she'd be like jumping around all over. What happened? This laptop is not good quality. I'm telling you, change the Wi-Fi and all. But she doesn't know that we are actually quietly switching it off.
Yeah.
So she's bound.
We have a situation. My husband, he's global head. So sometime his call with like Australia
know.
team, so it will be like midnight. And secondly, we have tried everything. She is smarter than her dad. She will go online and she will find a fix for that. Like,
of course, they will find a way. But I think making it
Making it draw the line. You have to draw the line and say,
yes,
like Prabhupada said, you have to be strict as a tiger. I mean, Prabhupada didn't say things whimsically. I thought about this, what Prabhupada said. For different ages, he said different things, So what I'm saying is that it is a stage where you can have strict discipline that beyond this time, you're not going to go online, This, you can give her limits, okay, for maybe 1 hour a day, you can have access. And then you take it away or somehow, detach it,
Yes, Mataji. And the school world, though it's a grammar school, it's scary. The kind of dresses we see the children wearing, the kind of topics they talk on. It's especially for first generation. It's scary world out there.
Yeah. The other option is to homeschool, that's another option. I mean, in America, it's very, very easy to homeschool. So much is provided for, curriculums and all those things are all given. It may, you may not agree to it at this point now, but again, things are getting, now even Americans, they are feeling that they are going so much since the COVID, so much homeschooling has increased in America, So especially after the school shootings, I mean, we had like so many school shootings in the last year, and because of COVID, shootings were not happening. Now it's going to start up again, So genuinely, parents are afraid of sending their children to school now, because of so many myriads of problems now. Because it is very tough to fight with so many things. However, if you cannot, then I say, then at least draw the line and say, well, this is what you're going to do only at this time. Otherwise, you don't have access.
I'm definitely going to restrict that. I'll be the mummy I'm supposed to be policing. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
So,
maybe the last question, probably, is it Radhika Mataji? You have raised hand.
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhu and Hare Krishna Mataji. Hare Krishna everyone.
Hare Krishna.
My husband want to ask one question, Mataji. He wants to ask. I'm giving to my husband.
Oh, sure.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I was just listening very quietly, and it just resembles how you explain, you share your wisdom to people, and the similar questions, even though similar question, you repeating the same thing, but still patiently is very, very important. And I can resemble this with Srila Prabhupada. Like, he has to be very quiet and explain the same question 100 times. So we're very glad to you having him. So my question is, like, I've been listening so many things, but now generation, I mean, the difference between like our parents, when we have any kind of question or any problem, and they are in one tool, they just smack us and we understand the whole problem, right? So we just understand, okay, we got it now, we're gonna be in a track. But now generation, we can't do that. And I mean, even from like we've been in a different countries, they have like different certain rules, and we what we experience with our parents, our generation, we try to tell our children you have to be this and that. At the same time, kids spend like 6 to 7 hours in a school, and they have peer, and this age they get more influence from the peer rather than the children, I mean parents, because they I mean, we are very straightforward, and they feel like, you're instructing me instead of like, telling. And even though we read the books and we share our thoughts and make sure that they come to the proper channel, but also how do we tackle with a generation gap, like for example, in next 10 years, the generation going very fast, how to prepare them for the next generation so that they can survive, not only survive, they can be in that kind of generation, and they can work better way. So I don't know, but I'm confused, like if you like ask them to do this and that, and we think like they are missing something from the outer world, and they won't be able to cope in next after next 10 days. So can you just explain me, ma'am?
Yeah, how to narrow the gap, this generation gap, isn't it?
Yes,
well,
ma'am. Yeah.
Yes. So it's like the reason why the gap grows is because we have different interests, isn't it? So everybody in the material world, they have their own, they're thinking they're lords and masters of their own little world, right? And so there's conflicts, there's clashes, because my interest is different from your interest, and so we don't agree with each other, and so there's quarrel and all types of problems, and that happens on an extended scale among nations and and countries and all that. So so when we have a common goal of Krishna, consciousness, where Krishna is the master and we are all serving, then naturally there's harmony, you see. So how to build up that harmony, and that's what narrows the generation gap. Children who are growing up in Krishna consciousness, and they don't experience any generation gap. Actually, if you ask them, do they have a generation, they don't know what you're talking about, So it is possible, and that because generally a devotee child and a parent will wear the same things, and they will eat the same things. They have the same best favorite music. Everything is similar, right? So how to do that? That's the challenge. So like I said earlier, I mean, many of these great souls in our movement, they were not raised in Krishna consciousness, right? And so they had this association of Prabhupada, and for some others, it was association of another devotee, right? And by which they changed their life, the hearing of the chanting of the holy name. So we can only pray to Krishna, and try to do our best, of how to bring them to Krishna consciousness, how to make them attracted. But you have to do your duty as a parent, though, like in terms of putting the discipline, the brakes on when there need to be brakes, and and also reaching out to them so they can see us as their well-wishers, So how to balance those things, but not becoming so soft-hearted just because they have to follow the herd mentality,
Sure.
So yeah, because ultimately, there is no, ultimately Prabhupada said that children should both fear and love their parents and teachers. They should fear and love both. So there should be certain amount of fear in them, of repercussions from their parents, punishment from their parents, but also there should be trust. So we have to do both. So being very lax also is not good. Being very heavy is also not good. So Prabhupada said, give them the joys of Krishna consciousness. Try to see what they can do in the house and outside which gives them happiness. And like I said, try to give them association as much as you can. take them on trips, Holy Dham, and events, where they can have fun in Krishna consciousness. They can see that how Krishna consciousness is a whole culture. It's not some, closed bigotry type thing, where, they are, isolated. It's actually a very joyful process where devotees have a lot of fun and they experience happiness. So, I mean,
Sure, Mataji. It was very useful. So yeah, definitely. But yeah, like I said, like the challenge also like a limited time for the parents nowadays. When you work, when you're exhausted, and you come, when the kids come exhausted, is extremely difficult time. But yeah, I think as you mentioned, like it pairing up with a good team with a Krishna consciousness, and that will automatically pull them for kind of those work, and they will come to that flow. So like a positive energy is they're flowing through positive energy, and that will automatically have less pressure for the parents, and it will go in that way. Yeah, sure, Mataji. Thank you. Thank you, Mataji.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mataji. We would like to really say a big heartfelt thanks from the whole Bhakti Vriksha community from here, from London, and all the devotees. They have learned so much today, and so on behalf of all of them, I really want to say a big thank you for taking your time out from the busy schedule. We know your schedule actually, and obviously it's very early also in US, and you have been very patiently taking all the questions, and it's been nearly 3 hours. So that shows your compassion and your tolerance as well. So we're really, really thankful to you. And on behalf of our mentors, Arvind Krishna Prabhu, Yamuneshwari Mataji, I would like to express the sincerest gratitude as well. And the whole because they have a kids Bhakti Vrikshas going on, particularly in East London, in this area. So on their behalf also, some of the questions were taken by, the raised by Taruni Gopika Mataji. So she kind of coordinates with all the kids Bhakti Vrikshas. So there are quite a few leaders also joined. So they have got some tips and practical points to carry on as well. So and all the, especially all the parents, all the different levels, as well, they have all got a lot of different ideas and things to work on from now onwards. So really a big thank you to you, Mataji, for taking your time out and giving us your valuable association and a guidance how we can raise our children in a wonderful Krishna conscious environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, everyone, for listening patiently. And I really enjoyed all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Dandavat pranam.
Mataji, please come again.
See you again, Mataji.
Yeah, definitely. We might need to probably arrange another session. As Mataji has put her email address,
Thank you,
and we can
Mataji.
share.
Hare Krishna.
We can share Mataji's email address to you. If Mataji allows, of course.
Oh, yeah.
It's there.
Absolutely. Another session will be very on and off regular, Mataji. Please give us some time every now and then. That will be really, really helpful.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much for this session. I really learned a lot today. Thank you very much. Hari Bol.
Thank you. Yes, I'll be happy to come back. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Oh, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Very less.